Defendants are back in court, and we'll resume with the trial. The defense may call its next witness.
We're going to recall now, Your Honor, Mrs. Marta Cano.
Would you state your name again for the record?
Sure. Marta, M-A-R-T-A, Menendez, Cano, C-A-N-O.
All right.
Mrs. Cano, you previously testified that you were Jose Menendez's sister, correct?
That is correct.
And the prior witness, Mary Cano, is your daughter.
That is true.
All right. In 1979, did you and your children move to Princeton, New Jersey, that area?
Yes, we did.
Before that, you lived where?
Before that, I lived in San Juan, Puerto Rico for 14 years.
And during the time that your family resided in San Juan, Puerto Rico, did you make trips to the United States during which you'd see other members of your family?
Yes, I did.
In 1972, do you recall making a trip to the United States where you stayed with your brother Jose and his family in their home in New York?
Yes, I did.
At that time, were they living in the Muncie house that's on this chart?
That is correct.
And was this Muncie house, was the lot upon which this house stood at that time fairly heavily wooded?
Yes, it was.
Was it heavily wooded in the backyard?
Yes, it was.
Now, I want to show you a photograph. What's next one? Excuse me? 178. Thank you. May I mark this 178, Your Honor?
Yes.
It's a photograph that appears to show a family gathering and a Christmas tree. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
There's a marking on the back of that photograph. Did you put the marking there?
Yes, I did.
And what is the marking?
December 1972.
And where was this photograph taken?
That photograph was taken during the week that we spent on Jose and Kitty's property in Muncie, New York, during Christmas 1972.
You said you stayed on their property. Did you camp out or did you stay in the house?
No, we stayed in the house.
All right. And you stayed with them for a week?
Yes, we did.
And at that time, how old was Eric?
Eric was a baby. He had been 2 in November, the end of November.
So he was 2 years and 1 month.
That is correct.
And Lyle was going on?
Lyle was 4 and he was going on 5 in January.
Now, was it characteristic?
Counsel, if you go back to the podium.
Was it characteristic in the family to celebrate Eric's birthday at Thanksgiving?
Yes, it was.
And was it also typical of celebrating Lyle's birthday at Christmas?
That is correct.
So to the best of your recollection, did you ever attend any separate birthday functions for Lyle or for Eric, separate from these other holidays that were also happening?
No, unless it was a family gathering on that specific month for another reason.
Okay. Now, when you visited the family in 1972 during that week, did you see any behavior on the part, first of all, of your brother towards the children that you thought was notable?
Yes, I did.
And would you first describe the types of behaviors that you saw by your brother towards the children that you noted?
Do you want it towards Eric or towards Lyle?
Well, you can start with Eric if you like.
Well, with Eric, it was totally ignored unless he was doing something that Jose didn't like. And then he would just get up from the social gathering and say, Eric, very strongly, and go grab him, pull him, bring him, put him between his knees. And then he would squat and hold him on the shoulder and say, listen to me. And Eric would cry instantly. The instant the father would touch him, he would start crying. He said, stop crying. I tell you to stop crying. Why can't you stop crying? And he kept on yelling at the kid. And of course, Eric would cry more. And then he would get completely frustrated and just send him to his bed, to his room, and just stop right there. He just couldn't stand it.
Now, this is when Eric is 2.
Yeah.
And did you see this on more than one occasion during that week?
Yes, I saw it twice on that week.
And when he would send this 2-year-old to his room, would the child stay in the room?
Yeah, we didn't see him anymore that afternoon.
And would anybody, would his mother, would Kitty go to the room to see what the 2-year-old was doing in his room?
No, as a matter of fact, I tried and Kitty
Wait.
stopped me.
Excuse me, there be an objection.
No, sorry.
All right.
All right, the objection is sustained. The answer is stricken after no.
Okay. You never saw Kitty go to see what was happening inside the room with the 2-year-old?
No,
Did you go? Did you go?
no,
Did you try to go?
yes.
And who, if anyone, prevented you from going?
Kitty.
And tell us what happened.
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
She told me that her father had punished him and that I should not interfere.
Her father had punished
His
him,
father.
and you should not interfere.
That is correct.
Did you ever observe, well, let's stay with this week for a moment. Did you ever observe Kitty Menendez during this week ever interfere with Jose's punishments of Eric?
No, not at all.
Now, was there any other behavior besides the yelling, the grabbing, the shaking, and the sending to the room that you saw demonstrated by Jose in 1972 towards Eric that you thought was notable?
No, what I thought it was noticeable is that they were not supervising him and he was playing around with all the rest of the cousins, which were much older, and it just scared me to see such a little one outside playing with the big ones.
And you never saw, did you ever see Kitty Menendez go out periodically to check on the baby?
No.
Now, let's turn then to what you saw that was notable concerning your brother's behavior towards Lyle during that same period of time. Was it different than his behavior towards Eric?
Yes.
Would
Yes,
you
it was.
Describe what you saw with respect to Lyle.
Well, he was very proud of Lyle whenever Lyle was doing something competitive against any one of the other cousins. And he would brag about it. Look at Lyle. I mean, he's strong and he can hit Peter and he can hit so-and-so and not cry. And he loved the fact that Lyle didn't cry. And even if they were hitting him.
This was sort of roughhousing among the boy cousins?
Yeah, Jose used to induce that type of competitiveness, fighting type of relationship, which I personally disliked.
He induced it, or he encouraged it between who? Between Lyle and whom?
He encouraged it between Lyle and Eric, or between Lyle and Peter, which was 2 years older than Lyle at the time.
And he would brag that Lyle wouldn't cry even if Peter was hitting him?
That is correct.
What else did you notice with respect to the way that Jose treated Lyle?
Well, there was an instance similar to Eric's instance.
And would you describe that?
Lyle was playing with Peter and something occurred. I don't remember. It was nothing big. Jose did exactly the same thing. We were sitting on the gathering. We were all talking and we didn't see the incident.
Let me stop you for a moment. When you say we were sitting at the gathering, we were all talking, who were you talking about?
My ex-husband, Peter, Kitty, Jose, and I were sitting in the family room talking while the kids were playing.
So that the 4 adults were sitting and talking.
That's correct.
And at one point while you were sitting and talking, something happened?
That is correct.
And what happened?
I don't know exactly what happened. Something,
what happened that
they
you
were
did see?
running. Lyle was running after Peter, and Jose got out and said, Lyle, and did the same thing, janked him on the bicep and pulled him up and put him in front of him. And there was a big difference with Eric's respondo.
There was a big difference in whom? In Jose, or a big difference in the child?
In Lyle, he would get very stiff, very, very stiff, and look down and close his eyes and just listen to whatever his father had to say to him.
So Lyle didn't burst into tears and start crying.
No, he did not.
And what was the resolution then of the confrontation between Jose and Lyle? Lyle is silent, he's listening, then what happened?
He held him on the shoulders and showed him the same thing, and being on a squat position, looking straight at him. And he said, you stop that. You listen to me, you stop that. And Lyle just stayed there. He stopped whatever he was doing.
He wasn't sent to his room, though?
No, he was not sent to the room at that time. He just went to one side and stayed there for a while.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Cano, at that time in your life, in 1972, were you a teacher?
Yes, I was.
And what level did you teach?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled. You can answer the question.
I was teaching preschoolers from nursery to first grade.
And for how long a period of time in your life were you a preschool teacher?
14 years.
Now, did you in 1972, during this visit with the family, make any effort to talk to your brother about these behaviors that you saw?
Yes, I did.
Did you make any effort to talk to your sister-in-law about the punishments and the lack of supervision?
Yes, I did.
And what was your brother's response when you tried to talk to him about his treatment of the children?
He thought I was talking plain nonsense. He just made the fun out of me and asked me how many PhDs did I have in psychology and how many books had I read and who wrote them. And he just diminished my whole issue like ridiculous and not important.
What had you said to him?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
And what about Kitty? Was she present when Jose was mocking you this way?
Yes, she was.
And what did she do or say?
She just,
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well,
Objection sustained.
did you ever talk to her separately?
yes, I did.
And did she seem to listen to what you were saying?
No, she didn't think it was important.
I'll show you a photograph. I have two photographs that I'd like to know. 179 and
All right.
One 179 is the vertical, 180 is the horizontal. And if you want to put these. Mrs. Ken, I want to show you these two photographs and ask if you recognize the people in them.
Yes, I do.
Who's the smaller person
Oh, God, that's Eric.
and who's the larger person?
My brother, Jose.
And do you recognize? Okay.
All right. Have you seen these pictures before?
No, I have not.
Did you see them in a small version?
I don't recall.
Okay.
Your next question, please.
Does Eric appear to be between 1 and 2 years old in this photograph?
Yes,
In both of the photographs?
yes.
Do you, oops. Do you recall whether your sister-in-law, Kitty, frequently took photographs
Yes.
of the family?
Yes, she did.
Do you recall ever seeing your brother take photographs of family gatherings or of the children?
No, I do not.
So was Kitty the family photographer?
Yes, she was.
Were you aware in 1971 and 1972 that your brother would take the baby to the gym?
Yes, I was.
I moved to strike the answer as lack of personal knowledge of the foundation.
Sustain, the answer is stricken.
Did you ever see your brother take the baby to the gym?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see your brother have Eric hold on to a bar and lift him with it?
Yes, I did see that.
And how old was Eric when you saw your brother doing that?
In 1972. He was 2 years old.
And would you describe what your brother would do with respect to the baby in the bar?
He would just pull it up and hold him up and see how much he could stand without crying.
And eventually would the baby start to cry?
Yes.
And after the baby started to cry, would your brother then put him down?
He would laugh at him and then put him down and keep on laughing because he was such a little one. He was such a sissy. He just cried for everything.
And had you ever seen your brother do the same exercise with Lyle?
No, I did not.
Mrs. Cano, are you Eric's godmother?
Yes, I am.
And do you love him very much?
Yes, I do.
Were you present for his baptism?
No.
Why was that?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustain.
Over the years of Eric's childhood, between the ages of, say, 2 and 15, were you attempting to see him or be with him more than your brother and your sister-in-law would permit?
Definitely.
Did you feel that you were being purposely excluded?
Yes, I did.
Objection irrelevant. Move to strike the answer as listed.
Sustained, answer is stricken.
Did you know before Eric's baptism that you were being named godmother?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
After the visit in 1972, did you continue to see your brother and his family for certain family gatherings over the course of the year?
Yes.
What would you do, for example, living in San Juan, what would you do at Christmas?
We will go over to either Jose's or Terry's and spend a week there during the Christmas holidays.
So you came to New Jersey for Christmas.
That is correct.
What about Thanksgiving?
No, I did not.
What about other holidays or events? Did you come over for any of those?
During the summer, we usually spend 2 weeks also in the New Jersey area.
And during those 2 weeks, would you see your brother and his family at family functions?
Yes.
Did you, over the years between 1970, say, and 1979, develop a friendly relationship with your sister-in-law, with Kitty?
Yes,
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
yes, I did.
And did you spend time even alone with her?
Yes, I did.
And did you find her to be a person who talked about her life much?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled. You can answer that yes or no.
No.
Did she ever talk about her children?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
Yes, she did.
Did she ever tell you anything about any problem with either of her children?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
All right. Did she, when she talked about her children, did she tell you good things?
No, not really. Depend.
Okay. Did she tell you about Eric's learning disabilities?
No,
Did she tell you when they lost things, lost matches,
No.
lost rounds?
no,
Did she tell you when they got bad grades in school?
no,
Did she tell you when they were unhappy?
no.
Did she tell you Lyle wet
Okay,
his
counsel,
bed?
let's not go through a litany of things here.
My question is, did she ever say negative? Did she ever tell you about the negative things or the problems or the
No.
troubles?
No.
So when she talked about them, would she talk about the winning
Yes,
and the competing
correct.
and the superior qualities?
Yes.
And were those qualities all related to sports and athletics and competition
And school. Yes.
and school? What did she tell you, for example, about Eric's performance at school?
That it was
Very close for her, so
Sustained.
It's not being offered for the truth at all, Your Honor.
then it's irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you ever have any reason to believe, based on conversations with either your sister-in-law or your brother, that Eric was anything but a fabulous student?
No.
Irrelevant is her state of mind.
Sustained. The answer is straight.
Did they ever indicate to you, well, first of all, do you believe they were telling you the truth when they reported to you on their children's accomplishments?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
I'd like to be heard in this area, Your Honor.
All right, we'll take
But I
a
think-
recess, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll resume at 1:30. Don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll resume at 1:30.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
All right, the jurors have left. What was it that you wanted to discuss?
I wanted to, I need to elicit from this witness, Your Honor, one other aspect of
This family, I mean, I know the people are going to argue, and the press has asked, and it's a common question, which is, how could it be that these boys were abused and molested for so long and nobody knew? And one of the aspects of this family, which is very similar to probably most seriously abusive families, is the fact that they're incredibly secret and private. And what was typical in this family, and with Mrs. Menendez in particular, is that she would lie about her children's accomplishments in order to present this facade of the perfect, high-achieving, winning championship family. And never, ever discussed any issues that were problematic. Now, that has relevance to our defense and to the testimony of our expert witnesses and our clients in two ways. First of all, Mrs. Menendez was extremely concerned with status, and the court has been, based on prosecutorial objection, severely limiting us in the ability to show that she has this particular attitude that status is very important, not just material status, but respectability and people's opinions of her family as respectable and high achieving and high status. And that has to do with how she would be predicted by or expected by her children to react when they are threatening to reveal to the world probably the least status gaining activity parents can indulge in, which is sexual molestation. But it's also significant because it was another way in which these children were told that the secrets of the family must be kept secret. The fact that she would lie about their accomplishments, both in front of them and not, and hide anything troublesome or problematic, taught them at a very early age that nobody knows outside this family and nobody can know what happens inside this family, which was one of the ways that the boys were isolated and one of the ways they grew up believing there is nobody out there who would hear us, who would listen, who would understand. So I know it keeps coming up, but it sure hasn't come out yet for the juries that this is a very secretive, very duplicitous, very dishonest person who lies to keep family secrets and who lies to project this aura of perfection. And her boys hear this. I mean, they don't hear this particular conversation, but there are other witnesses who will indicate that the boys hear this, and this simply reinforces these three competing sets of messages. Number one, status and what people think is everything. Number two, we're really not good enough because mom lies to make us seem even better. And number three, no one must ever know that there's anything bad going on around here of any kind, even a bad grade. And so that's the themes that this kind of evidence supports.
Yes, interestingly, for all their secretiveness, we've had 4 cousins now testify that they lived in the home for various periods of time, one on several occasions and for more than a year. And those witnesses have been permitted to testify as to the family's habit and customs. But to now try to prove that I believe Mrs. Menendez was not forthcoming with this particular relative does not seem to prove any issue that is, I mean, it seems to be remote and it doesn't seem to prove an issue which goes to a legal defense in this case. They have put on at least 4 people who lived in the home. This particular type of evidence which is being sought from this witness appears to be remote and extreme, and we would object it on this point, those grounds.
What was the precise question that you wanted to ask?
Good question. I don't remember right now. I tried to do it 2 or 3 different ways.
Well, you wanted to ask whether she had a personal opinion if the mother was truthful. Obviously, that would be a conclusion on the part of the witness.
Okay. I wanted to ask her if Kitty was a very private and secretive person who never revealed anything negative or intimate about the family. And I think she would say yes.
All right, well, that's a compound question and goes into conclusions as well.
Your Honor, we'd also.
Well, you know, Your Honor, we all four knows. Let me just say one
Wait, let me hear the people's position.
It also assumes that's not evidence.
All right. Ultimately, here, as we have discussed before, the issue is what was in the minds of the defendants at the time the parents were killed. And now we're basically having questions asked in regards to what the mother did or did not say in a time frame from 1972 until 1989. And that's really calls for speculation and conclusion, and also doesn't relate to the defendant's state of mind. So what this witness did or did not hear the mother say is not really the issue. It's what the defendants say they heard the mother say.
But Your Honor,
Could be an issue in this case anyway.
It does bear on the defendant's state of mind. Their state of mind, at least in part, was that their mother was quite capable and willing to kill them to keep a scandal like this from breaking. I mean, at the very, very end, the ultimate, I mean, there's lots of intermediate states of mind that add to that one. But at the very, very end, they were convinced that this highly secretive, highly status conscious, ally of dad, more so in the last years than ever before, would kill them rather than let them go public to get help by letting the world know what had been going on in their
Would
family.
kill them and was going to kill them
Would kill them
imminently.
and was going to kill them imminently. I mean, and she said before, the night before, she told my client, "You're the reason this family isn't going to work out." She blamed him for the crisis that they were going through because he had the effrontery to finally go to somebody for help, for having gone to his brother seeking his help in getting the molestation to stop. She had taken a position in the last years of openly telling both of her children that she hated them and wished they had not been born. And we have witnesses, including this one, to whom she made the same statement in the presence of the children when they were even smaller. This was not pure fantasy on this part. This is a woman who was hostile, secretive, private, dishonest, and concerned more than anything else with what the outside world perceived of her. And we have not been able even through the 4 cousins who lived there, to be able to get into what they all do know and haven't been permitted to testify to, which is that she was incredibly secretive and was incredibly private and never revealed any negative details. Now, that isn't a bare conclusion on Mrs. Cano's part, because after they're dead, all this stuff comes out that was never talked about. Eric's dyslexia, Lyle's bedwetting, the burglaries, which no one in the family was told about, Jose's affair, which went on for 8 years, which put Kitty in the hospital as a suicide attempt. She never told anyone about that, although it was the driving misery of her life for 3 years. She's in therapy twice a week, never breathes a word of it, because scandal is to be avoided at all costs. And that is a very important theme. And
Counsel,
moreover-
again, what you're slowly and gradually moving towards here is a psychoanalysis of the parents.
And I think that's appropriate.
Well,
frankly.
that's an issue that I'm sure we'll discuss. But at this point, the court is going to sustain the objection. The relevance of this evidence, if it's relevant at all, only relates to what the defendants knew or were aware of in regards to the attitude of the parents, and not what someone else has by way of opinion or perception of the mother's personality or behavior.
But then you're saying we cannot corroborate our clients with anyone else. In other words, let's assume hypothetically I make an offer of proof. Eric will testify that he knew his mother lied about him all the time, that he knew his mother was very secretive, that he knew his mother was concerned about status. Does that mean we cannot put on any other witness to corroborate them? They have to sink or fall on their own credibility, and they're the defendant?
It would have to depend upon what issues were relevant. If the defense position is that the defense case will rise or fall on whether or not the parents disclose that one of the defendants wet his bed, then that won't be relevant and won't be very persuasive. If there is something more significant at issue, then perhaps it might be relevant. But much of what you say are things that normally don't go outside of the household.
Well,
So it doesn't
Your
prove
Honor,
anything.
In this household, nothing goes outside the household, and instead lies are being told. And they're being told right in front of the boys most of the time. They hear all these false.
Then those are the things you can bring out.
But here's my point, and that's this: when we talk about opinions and conclusions, we all make judgments about other people's personalities. Okay, I would say, for example, if I were asked about you, that you are not a person who is ever personally forthcoming about anything emotional, and that has to do with having been acquainted with you for a very long time, although never close, but just as a personality type. Now, that's not some wild speculation on my part. All I'm trying to, and people who have any acquaintance with me at all, and I'm sure you would agree, would say I am a relatively emotional speaking person. I talk about feelings a great deal. That's not a wild speculative type of conclusion. I think people would say you are a very private person. I am a less private person. And those are the only kinds of questions I'm really asking this witness. Kitty Menendez was known as a very private person. I don't think it takes, that's not a wild conclusion, and it doesn't call for hearsay. It is simply knowing that this is not a person who talks freely about their personal life.
All right.
So I think I should be able to elicit that.
All right. The nature of your arguments personalizing it doesn't help very much, but regardless of that, I'll make a public ruling that I don't find it's relevant.
All right.
All right. Anything else now before we take our recess? All right. We'll be in recess until 1:30.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Record will reflect that both defendants are in court with their counsel and people are represented. You may continue your direct examination.
Thank you. Mrs. Cano, drawing your attention again to the photographs of Eric on his bar. Was it at about this age that you also saw your brother holding him, pulling him up on a bar in the house?
Yes.
And did you have a conversation with your brother on one of these occasions when he was pulling Eric up on the bar, in which you were trying to give him information about how dangerous that was?
Yes, I did.
And what were you trying to tell him? Or what were you telling him?
What did you say? Is that the question?
Yes, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
I pleaded him not to do it based on the major accident that my son had had.
What did you say? The objection is sustained. The answer is stricken. What did you
Tell
say?
us basically what you said.
I told him that a neurosurgeon had told me that anything that was above the child's level height was a base to a skull fracture.
Had your son suffered a skull fracture by falling off a jungle gym?
Yes,
Did you tell your brother about that?
he knew about it.
You had discussed it in the family before this evening.
Oh, definitely. It was a major thing.
And and how old was your son when he suffered the skull fracture?
3.5.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
But was your son older even than Eric when he was injured?
Same objection.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Were you passing on information to your brother that you had received from the doctors that had treated your son?
Yes,
And what was your brother's reaction?
he just laughed at it.
Was your sister-in-law, Kitty Menendez, present when you were saying these things to your brother?
Yes,
Did she appear to be part of the conversation, attentive?
yes, she was.
And what did she do when you made these statements?
Same expression as Jose. She just smiled as well.
Over the years, did you have an opportunity to observe your sister-in-law, Kitty Menendez, with respect to whether she was a person who was physically strong or physically weak?
Yes, I did.
Irrelevant.
Overall.
And how would you describe her as a woman with respect to physical strength?
Kitty was very, very strong. She could do things that even Jose couldn't do.
What kinds of things?
For example, when they were moving from a very close apartment within the same block, they were picking up furniture, and Jose went to get some help to move a mirror that he was not able to pick up. And when he came back, Kitty had already taken it by herself.
Did you observe her doing things like that, moving heavy objects in her home in the presence of the boys?
Yes.
Did there come a time in approximately 1985 when you assisted Kitty in getting some drugs?
Yes, I did.
And would you tell us about that?
Objection irrelevant.
I'm sorry?
352.
All right, did counsel wish to be heard on that?
Well, perhaps if I make it more specific, Your Honor. Did you obtain some Valium for her in 1985? Or give her some Valium?
Yes.
And was this a prescription of yours?
Yes.
And what was the reason why you gave her the Valium at that time?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
In 1985, Mrs. Cano, did you notice some change in your sister-in-law's behavior, even when she was in front of the children?
Yes, I did.
And what was the change that you noticed?
Kitty was sort of incoherent. She was very tense and very nervous, and she seemed to glare at things and just stay quiet and don't respond to things that we were talking about.
Did that behavior seem, how would you characterize it?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did it seem normal? Did it seem unusual? Did it seem strange? Did
It was
seem-
not normal.
Objection. Move to strike the answers in proper opinion.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Why do you remember this behavior?
Irrelevant.
Sustained.
What was there about this behavior that struck you at the time?
Objection sustained. Let's move on to something else.
Did you ever see the children react to this change in her behavior?
Yes, I did.
And what did you see by way of reaction on their part?
They were sort of evading her,
You mean avoiding her?
avoiding her. Yes.
Did she ever share with you any problems that she was having that might have caused that behavior?
Objection irrelevant. Officer Gerson.
I don't believe
Whose
it,
behavior you're
Judge.
talking about? The children's behavior or the Miss Menendez's behavior?
Mrs. Menendez, did you ever offer an explanation for this behavior?
Overall.
Yes, she did.
And what did she say was the explanation for this behavior?
Your side, Your Honor.
Overall.
She told me that she was okay, but she was going through a very difficult time, that she needed to take some Valium and she needed to take some medicine, that she had run out of it.
So she never did actually explain what was going on.
Trial to a conclusion on part of the
Sustained.
No, strike that. My previous question was, did she actually tell you what was the difficult period, what was going on, what were the problems?
No.
Had you commented on her behavior? Is that why she said what she said?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Was what she said, did that follow immediately upon your commenting on her behavior?
Yes.
Did you ever observe during the time the family was living in New Jersey and during the time that you were living in New Jersey, did you observe your sister-in-law doing her children's homework?
Yes, I did.
Now, were the children there? Was she doing it with them or was she doing it for them?
No, they were playing tennis outside.
And she was in the house?
Yes,
When you say they were playing tennis, were they doing practices and drills?
that's correct.
They weren't goofing off.
No.
And she was actually doing the schoolwork inside the house?
She was doing Eric's homework.
Did you ever did you ever personally observe her writing Lyle's college application essays?
Yes, I did.
Was he present and contributing, or was she doing this on her own?
No, she was doing it on her own.
Do you recall, just to move ahead for a moment, you were here in Los Angeles in June of 1989, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
And did you attend Eric's graduation?
Yes, I did.
And that was at Beverly Hills High School?
Yes.
And did you go to the graduation with your sister-in-law,
Yes, I did.
with Kitty Menendez?
Yes.
And how many of you were in the car on the way to the graduation?
On the way to the graduation, it was Jose, Kitty, my mother, and I.
On the way back from the graduation, was there a different group of people in the car with Kitty?
Yes.
And who was in the car with Kitty on the way back?
It was Eric, Uncle Gene, and myself.
Now, as far as you understand it, Uncle Gene was the brother of Kitty's mother?
That is correct.
And did something unusual happen on the way back home from the graduation when Kitty was driving?
Yes.
And would you tell us what happened?
Kitty hit a car on the back. She was accelerating very rapidly, and the light changed, and the car in front of us stopped, and she hit the car on the back, and the car
Okay,
turned.
just stop right there. After she hit the car, what did she do?
Well, the car turned on the road to stop to talk about the accident, and she just put the accelerator on and asked Eric to look back and see if he had seen the license plate.
So she ran from the scene.
Yes.
Now, did she say anything to you and to Eric concerning what had happened?
Yes, she did. She said that she did not want Jose to know about this and asked Eric to tell him that she had gone to the grocery store.
Okay. She was asking Eric to tell his father that she went to the grocery store?
That's correct.
Well, was she planning on going somewhere?
She was going to drop us and go and fix the car.
Okay, so she asked Eric, tell your father I've gone to the grocery store.
That's correct.
What did Eric say?
He said, no, not me. I don't want to tell anything to my father.
Okay. And then did she ask someone else to do something?
Yes, she asked me
She asked you what?
to tell Jose whenever she dropped us that she had gone to the grocery store for some things that she needed.
And did you in fact do that? Did you tell your brother this lie that she was going to the grocery store?
Unfortunately, I did, because when I walked in, he asked me, where was Kitty?
Had you been in other situations before that with Kitty Menendez where she did something dishonest and asked you to lie about it, or asked the children to lie about it?
Yes.
Objection, irrelevant foundation.
Sustained. Answer straight.
Did you ever on any other occasion hear her encourage either or both of her children to lie?
Yes.
Did you observe over the course of the time that your brother and Kitty were married, did you observe her ever fighting back to your brother, arguing with him, physically hitting him?
Yes, I
Objection, irrelevant foundation.
Overruled. The answer will stand.
Yes, I did.
Towards the end of their lives in the last few years, did you still see that kind of behavior, or had it changed?
No, I did not. It was a big change.
Do you recall seeing Jose and Kitty at your father's funeral?
Yes, I did.
Would you tell us when that was?
February of 1987.
And at that time, did you notice a significant change in the behavior that you had seen as between Jose and Kitty before that?
Yes, I did.
What did you notice in 1987 that was different?
They were holding hands. They were together all the time. Jose will ask for Kitty's opinion on the issues that were being brought up.
In conversation?
Yes.
And was that different than what you had seen before?
Very different.
And how was it different?
Well, he used to humiliate Kitty and laugh at her and intimidate her and put her down and
And
not consider her opinion at all.
and would he do that in front of the children?
Yes, he did it in front of everybody.
In front of the family?
Yes.
By the way, did you see your brother do that kind of behavior with the boys when they were teenagers?
Definitely, especially Eric.
Did you see him do that to the boys even before they were teenagers?
Yes.
Did you see him do that to other children in the presence of the boys, like your son or any of the nieces?
Yes.
When your brother was in the presence of his sons, let's first take it before they were teenagers, did you ever see him give them orders or directions, tell them what to do, tell them when to go, things like that?
He did that all the time.
And how did they respond to that?
They just obeyed. It was a command.
Did you ever see them at any time when you were around them, when he was giving them any kind of direction or order, did you ever see either one of them argue, fight, refuse, disobey?
Oh, no.
You say that. Oh, no. Are you sure? Never?
Jose was not the type of person you could answer to.
What about you? Could you answer to him?
No.
Did you see adults try to answer him back?
Yes, and they would be humiliated and ridiculed
In front of his children?
in front of everybody.
Now, when the boys were teenagers, had anything changed with respect to their obedience to their father?
No, they were very obedient.
Did you ever hear your brother share his philosophy of winning in front of his boys? Did you ever hear him make comments about his philosophy of winning in front of the
Yes.
children?
Yes, I did.
And what was it you heard him say?
Jose would believe that everybody could compete, but only one could win. And that was the only thing that counted, to win.
And you heard him use those words, anybody can compete, but only one can win?
Those were exactly his words. He used them several times. He used them once with my daughter.
And did you ever hear him talking to his children when they hadn't won?
Yes.
And what were those talks like?
Well, they were private talks. He would take the boys sideways and talk to them when they were older. When they were younger, he would do it in front of me and Andy and Eric, for example, which was with us.
All right, let's start with that then. When Eric was younger and Jose was talking openly in front of you and Andy, and Eric hadn't won, what were those talks like?
He would tell him he was a sissy, that it was about time that he became a Menendez, that he was not worth his last name, that he should be ashamed of his average, mediocre performance.
And were those words that your brother typically used when criticizing average and mediocre and sissy?
Yes.
And was this notion about being a Menendez as being something superior, had you heard that on other occasions?
Many occasions.
Was this sort of your brother's cliche about the family
Yes, he was
tradition?
very proud of himself and what he was, and he wanted the boys to be the same.
Was he also proud of his parents and what they were?
Yes.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Now, Did you have firsthand knowledge of the degree to which your brother was involved with the everyday details of his children's lives?
Yes, I did.
And how did you obtain that firsthand knowledge?
In many ways. I mean,
Let's talk about this way. Did you ever specifically overhear your brother in his office, his business office, giving instructions or directions to his wife at home?
yes.
And how many times did you overhear that?
In the 2 occasions that I was with him waiting for a ride back home in his office
His office was where?
in New York.
And his home was in New Jersey.
Correct. Princeton.
And were there days when you would either go into the city, into New York City with him,
That's correct.
and he would give you rides home?
Yeah, he would take me back and forth. Right.
Were you a working mother
That is
from
correct.
1979 on?
Yes, I was.
And did you work in New York City also?
I had clients in New York City.
What was your profession at that time, 1979 to, say, 1985?
I was a financial planner.
And you're now a stockbroker?
I am both now. Yes.
Now, on these 2 occasions that you remember being in your brother's office in New York, what do you recall happening?
We were listening to some records that he had just brought up with RCA, and
Let me stop you there so the juries will understand. At that time, did your brother work for RCA Records?
That's correct.
And would he, from time to time, talk about artists or up-and-coming groups and play the music for members of the family?
That is correct.
Okay. And is that what's happening here?
Yes, while I was listening to the music, he made a phone call to Kitty to check what the boys had done that afternoon, if they had been in the tennis court and how many hours, and gave him instructions of what to do until he got home.
You said gave him instructions.
Gave her instructions of what to do until he got home.
Okay. And that happened both times that you were waiting for him to give you a ride?
Yes.
Mrs. Cano, do you remember what year that might have been?
1982, 1983.
Let's go back, if we can, to that time around 1972. You've given us one example of an episode between your brother and Lyle. Did you ever see your brother, apart from yelling at Lyle in the way you've described, make Lyle go to his room?
Yes, I did.
Did you ever see him punish him by not allowing him to play with the cousins?
Yes, he did.
Did you ever hear him in this era, 1972, call Lyle names?
He ridiculed him because he did not know the answer of a question that Peter knew.
What words would he use to ridicule him?
He would tell him, "You're a dummy. It's about time that you learn more."
Did you ever hear him use the word idiot?
Oh, yes, that was special.
Did he reserve idiot for Lyle, or did he use idiot for his other son as well?
He used idiot for everybody. There were a
Wife,
bunch of
you.
idiots. You idiots. So that was his favorite word.
Okay. Now let's talk about the methods that you observed when the children were small, beyond what you've already told us. Jose's methods for controlling the children. You've talked about his grabbing them. Were there other things that he did?
Yes, he would look at them straight on the eyes, and he made them look at him straight on the eyes. And if they didn't, he would hold their face to make sure they were looking up to him.
Okay. Now, let's move forward to that time when you're living in the same community, basically, as your brother and his family.
You're talking 1979?
1979 on. And with respect to how your brother treated Lyle, do you recall anything special about a manner or method or practice of your brother's concerning having talks with Lyle?
Yes, he encouraged competition, tremendous amount of competition. Where he always had to win.
Who's he?
Lyle always had to win.
So you remember him telling that to Lyle?
Yes,
Do you remember your brother ever taking Lyle aside to talk to him?
yes.
And do you recall how long those talks would last? Or at least how long they'd be off by themselves?
Between 10 minutes and 45 minutes, depending on the issue.
Did you ever attend during these early years in New Jersey, 79, say to 82, did you ever attend any soccer games that Lyle or Eric were participating in?
Yes, I did.
And could you describe what your brother's behavior was during the course of his children's soccer games?
He would run parallel to the field with the boys and be yelling at them all the time what to do during the game.
And if they did something wrong, would he yell criticism?
Yes, he did.
And did you ever see him criticizing or yelling at the other children on the team?
Yes.
Did you ever observe your brother on weekends training and drilling the boys in soccer and or tennis?
Yes.
Do you recall ever seeing your brother coaching Lyle?
Of course, yes.
And what did you observe by way of his style of coaching Lyle?
Is it soccer or tennis?
Tennis for the moment.
He would just hit balls and yell at him and keep on hitting balls as hard as he could to Lyle.
Did you ever see your brother, in effect, challenging Lyle to perform in front of the relatives?
Yes.
And what would that be about?
That could be from a question of history to any kind of strength action.
Well, let's talk for a moment about things like history. He would do what, like ask him a question, make him show off to get the right answer in front of the relatives?
That is correct. Peter was
Excuse me, that's legal.
Objection overruled. The answer will stand.
Go ahead.
Next question.
Peter was a very bright young man, and he
But
would
Peter you're talking
right.
about Peter, your son, not Peter, your husband.
Peter, my son,
Okay.
correct. And he would bring Lyle and try to challenge him, and if Lyle didn't respond, he would humiliate him.
Okay, who's he though? You were talking about Peter. Is that who you mean? Who
No,
would bring Lyle?
Jose would bring Lyle and challenge him against Peter's knowledge, which was older too. And he would humiliate Lyle if he didn't know the answer that Peter had just given before.
Okay, so he would try to bring Peter in, try to bring Lyle in to compete now with your son, with Peter.
That's correct.
Did you ever observe your brother Jose talk to Lyle, like sort of in baby talk or talking down to him like he's a child? At any age, did you ever see him do that?
Objection, compound.
Sustain.
Did you ever see your brother talk to Lyle as if Lyle was a little child?
What time frame are you talking about?
Well, let me just ask you this. Did he seem to treat Lyle when Lyle was a small child, did he treat him like a small child from what you
No,
could
he
see?
always,
Lack of foundation.
Are you asking about conversations or something else?
I think I'd like to focus on the way he talked to him, okay?
All right. Why don't you rephrase the question?
Thank you. Did he talk to Lyle when Lyle was a small child as if he was a small child?
no, he talked to him as an adult,
And did that go on until Lyle was an adult?
of course.
And what about with respect to Eric?
Same thing. The only difference was he was very annoyed because Eric would start crying and he just hated that.
So when he would humiliate or yell at Eric, Eric would cry.
Objection, assumes facts not in evidence.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken, calling for conclusion on the part of the witness.
That he would cry?
Ever.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant obviously in your presence from what you could see.
Right.
And would Eric tend to cry when his father chastised him, humiliated him, did all those things you've discussed?
Yes, he did.
And would Lyle tend to do what you previously discussed where he'd look down and
Yeah.
be very stiff?
Lyle would get very stiff, yes, and tense.
I asked you before if you loved Eric very much.
Yes, I do.
How do you feel about Lyle?
Same way. I love him very much.
During his lifetime, did you love your brother?
Very much.
And how about your sister-in-law?
I love Kitty very much too.
Did you ever hear your brother, in talking to Lyle, compare Lyle unfavorably to other kids?
Yes, I did.
And what would those conversations be like?
He would challenge him on a very humiliating way that look what usually was Peter. I mean, I hate to keep on bringing that up, but it was usually Peter. When Peter became an All-American in 1983, I was telling Jose about Peter's doings, and he said, wait, and he called Lyle and says, I want you to listen to this. And he made Lyle listen to it, and I feel very embarrassed because it sounded like bragging. And he said to Lyle, why can't you be like your cousin Peter?
Now, had you ever said to your children in front of Eric or Lyle, why can't you be like somebody else?
No.
Was that one of those things as a preschool teacher that you were trying to tell your brother not to do?
That's correct.
Now let's turn for a moment to focus on Eric and your brother's treatment of Eric from 1979 onward. Let's start with the swim meets. Did you attend some of Eric's swim meets?
Yes, many of them.
And did you observe physically what Eric's condition would be after he had been in the water for a while?
Yes.
And physically, how did he appear?
He would tremble and get purple, and he just shivered, completely get very tense with his hands together because he was very cold.
And was that common? I mean, is this what happened to Eric when he'd go in these pools?
Yes, it was a cold pool.
Concerning Eric's physical build at this time in 79, 80, 81 when he was swimming, was he a pudgy kid?
No, he was very skinny.
Did you ever hear your brother at any of these swim meets after Eric had swam and when he was in this shivering condition say anything to Eric about a massage?
Yes.
And what, Mrs. Cano, do you remember your brother saying about a massage?
He would say, come on, Eric, I'm going to give you a massage so you can warm up.
And what would happen after he said that to Eric? Did they go off somewhere?
Yes. Eric would go to him to a bench or somewhere nearby.
And did you see your brother massaging Eric?
Yes, I did.
Would Eric say anything when your brother said, let me go give you a massage?
No.
Do you recall an episode in 1979 or 1980 when you recall Eric crying because he lost a match at the swim meet?
Yes.
And do you recall your brother's reaction, or what appeared to be your brother's reaction to Eric's crying?
Jose was very angry because he had been so stupid and had lost the meet.
And did your brother say anything to Eric about his crying?
Yes, he just told me that, what can I do with this sissy kid? I mean, he won't stop crying. I can't believe this kid.
And was this said in front of Eric?
Yes.
And after saying that, did he take Eric somewhere?
He had already taken Eric somewhere, and Eric was crying. Eric was sitting down in a little corner with his head on his knees on the floor.
And what did you do?
I tried to go to console him.
And what happened?
Jose didn't let me.
Let me ask you this, Mrs. Cano. You were an adult at this time, correct?
Yes.
And how many years older than you was your brother?
I'm 2.5 years old than Jose.
You're 2.5 years older than Jose?
Yes.
Okay, so you're the older child.
Right.
Well, why didn't you ignore him?
Jose was a very strong character. You just could not go against Jose's wishes. There's no way. I mean, the tone of his voice and the aggressiveness of the way he said things was very intimidating. You just did not dare to do anything he didn't want you to do.
Even for your godson who you loved so much?
Well, he stopped me. He put his hand, he said, let go, Marta. He'll be fine. Leave him alone. He's not a little boy.
Of course, how old was Eric?
He was 7, 8, maybe 9.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Now, did you observe your brother at any soccer matches with Eric?
Yes, I did.
And did you hear your brother giving Eric any kind of lecture on aggressiveness or toughness or anything like that?
Yes, I did.
And what was it he was telling Eric at that time?
Well, at that time, the competition was against Andy. Andy was younger, but was very strong and aggressive. And he said, why can't you be like your cousin Andy? Look at Andy. Andy's tough, and you have to be so weak and such a sissy. I
And
felt very bad.
what was Eric doing when his father was saying that to him?
Eric was looking down, very embarrassed.
I'll ask you something. You saw Eric play tennis, and you saw Eric swim, and you saw Eric play soccer.
Yes.
Was he a sissy?
No, he was not. He was great.
Was he a gifted athlete?
I believe so.
Did he play?
Excuse me, move to strike Black Foundation.
As to which?
Gifted athlete.
Objection overruled. Answer will stand.
Your children are athletic too, are they?
We are all athletics, yes.
The whole family?
Yes, right.
Did Eric seem to work hard at his sports?
Very much so.
Did he play hard at his sports?
Very, very hard.
Did he seem to try hard?
Yes, he did.
And did he get better at things as he progressed through them?
He did get, but not enough for Jose.
Now, do you recall when Eric was a youngster, under teenage, that he had some very picky food habits?
Yes.
Now, without being so picky as to get into what the picky food habits were, do you remember your brother ever commenting in front of not just Eric, but the family
Yes.
about Eric's eating?
Yes.
Objection irrelevant.
This is in front of Eric Menendez.
Yes, Your Honor.
Objection overruled.
And would this be something that would occur during one of these big meals, these family gathering meals like Thanksgiving or Christmas or one of those?
That is correct.
Okay. Would you tell us what your brother did and said about Eric and Eric's food habits?
Jose, in several occasions, would take Eric's plate and show it to everybody, ridiculing him because he used to pick things to the sides that he didn't like, and he thought it was ridiculous what he was doing.
So what you say he would take the plate around and
Show it to everybody, especially to all the other cousins, to see what Eric was doing and what a sissy Eric was.
Now, Eric was at the table while his father's doing it.
Yes,
And what is Eric doing while his father's doing this?
he wanted to disappear.
Okay, but you
Very embarrassed.
can't see
Objection
what somebody
sustained. The
wants.
answer is stricken.
Just try to tell us what you saw.
He used to blush.
And would he sometimes look in a particular direction?
Yes, he tried to make it a joke too, but it didn't work.
He was still blushing.
Yeah.
And you say your brother would show the plate and he'd make some kind of comment?
Yes.
And what would he say?
He would say that, don't you think it's about time Eric grows up and eats his whole meal? And don't you think this is sissy? He would show it to different cousins.
And what would the cousins do?
Everybody would laugh.
Was it a frequent occurrence at these family gatherings between 1979 and 1986 when Jose was belittling or humiliating other people that everybody else would laugh?
Yes.
Would you laugh?
No,
You're the only one who wasn't laughing?
that's correct.
Did your daughter Marianne laugh?
I don't recall, but I doubt it.
Do you recall times at these family gatherings when your brother would be watching TV and would have some kind of interaction with Eric?
Yes.
And what would that be about? I mean, not what it's about. Describe for us what you saw and heard.
He would call Eric when he was gone and ask him to sit down beside him and watch the program with him.
And when you say Eric when he was gone, where would Eric have been gone to?
Eric used to go aside and play with Andy.
This is when Eric and Andy had become friends?
Yes.
And if Eric was off playing with Andy, is that when your brother would call to him?
Yes.
And what would then happen?
He would just stay the rest of the afternoon beside Jose watching TV.
Did he complain?
No.
Did he argue, oh, Dad, I don't want to. I want to play
No.
with Andy? Nothing like that.
No.
Did you observe your brother encouraging competition such as arm wrestling or other physical acts between Lyle and Eric?
Yes.
And when your brother would encourage this, would both boys participate?
Yes.
And what would be the usual outcome?
The usual outcome is that Lyle would win, and he would praise Lyle and ridicule Eric for losing, make a big deal out of it.
And what about your sister-in-law, Kitty? Was she present for these little competitions?
Yes.
And how would she react when Eric lost and your brother was ridiculing him?
She would smile with Jose.
Did you, between the period of 1979 to 1986, when the family moved, did you ever, or do you remember ever seeing Kitty intercede with Jose's belittling or berating or making fun of Eric?
No.
Did you see how Eric treated his mother during those years?
Yes.
How did he treat his mother?
He felt sorry for her. He looked like he was worried about her. He would run errands for her.
Was he nice to her?
Yes.
Do you recall when Lyle was very young? When he was just a baby?
Not much. I wasn't around.
Okay. Do you recall when he was a little toddler?
Yes, I do.
You recall particularly during that week even that you stayed with them in Muncie.
Yes, I do.
Do you recall how Kitty treated Lyle when he was very young?
She did not like Lyle. She seemed to resent him.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did she pay much attention to him?
No, she did not.
Did she pick him up and hug him and kiss him and coo and fondle and cuddle and do any of those things?
No.
Did you ever see situations, particularly during that week's visit, when Lyle would express hunger? That he was hungry?
Well, he would fetch for himself. He would go get on top of whatever was needed and just try to reach whatever he wanted to eat.
Okay. And did you comment on this to your sister-in-law?
Yes, I tried to grab whatever he was trying to grab at one time, and Kitty told me, Marta, leave him alone. He can do it for himself. He's used to it.
4.5, going on 5? Had you seen anything like that even earlier?
Yes.
At about what age? I mean, what of Lyle's age? Not
2.5.
And how did it come up at 2 or 2.5?
Eric Eric the same, but Lyle would just go and climb a chair and get on top of the counter and get his cereal and rip off the box and pour it out, and it was just a disaster.
Well,
Lucas Frank Velasquez.
Okay.
All right. The last portion of the answer was just a disaster, is stricken as a conclusion.
at that stage, before the child went and climbed and tried to do these things, did he express hunger? Did she, in other words, did you ever hear her tell him as a little guy, go get it yourself or feed yourself or do anything?
No, I did not. He seemed to know that. He seemed to know that he would just go and get it himself.
Sustained. The answer is stricken.
When you observed Lyle at that young age climbing counters and reaching in cereal boxes, was your sister-in-law present?
Yes.
Did she make a move to grab the baby so he doesn't fall off the counter?
No.
Nothing. Did you make a move?
Yes, I did.
And that's when she stopped you and said he can fend for himself?
That's correct.
Let's move on to a time when Eric was approximately 7 or 8. Do you recall a time that you were supposed to go shopping with Kitty?
Yes, I do.
Now, was this before you moved to New Jersey in 79, or was it after, and we're just there for a visit, or was it after you moved?
No, that was during the first 6 months that I had moved into New Jersey.
All right, then Eric would have had to have been 8.5 to 9.
Right.
All right. Now, during this time, was there a day when you were supposed to go shopping with Kitty and you went over to her house?
Yes.
And when you got there, did you become aware that Eric was in some kind of condition?
That is correct.
And would you describe for us what condition you observed Eric to be in?
I saw Eric in the kitchen and I went to give him a kiss and I found that he was burning in fever.
Okay. And then what happened?
I asked him what was wrong and he told me he was sick.
You keep using he. I know it's the
I'm sorry.
Spanish
Eric
language
told
one.
me he was sick.
All right. And was Kitty present?
Kitty was upstairs finishing getting ready to go.
All right. And you think this was when did you move to, what month did you?
I moved in July 1979. This is probably around January 1980, January, February 1980.
Okay, so Eric would be just a couple of months past 9.
That's correct.
Yeah, at the end of the year. I know, it's confusing.
Your next question, please.
Eric turns his age on November 27th at the end of the preceding year.
That is correct.
All right, so in most of 1980, Eric is actually 9.
Yes.
All right, so when at some point does Kitty come downstairs and you have a discussion with her about Eric's condition?
Yes, I did.
And does this discussion go on in front of Eric?
Yes.
And would you tell us what that discussion was?
I just told her that we didn't have to go shopping, that I didn't know Eric was sick, and that, we could leave it for another day.
Okay, and what was your sister-in-law's response?
Oh, she told me, oh, no, Marta, I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, Eric knows how to. He's fine. He just has a fever. It's no big deal.
And was there any discussion about whether he had seen a doctor or was being taken to a doctor?
Overall.
No, she just said to me, he knows where the aspirins are. We don't worry about it. He's used to staying by himself.
What time of day was it when you were leaving to go shopping?
9:30 in the morning.
And did you see whether there was any food prepared for the child for the course of the day?
No, as a matter of fact, that's why Eric was in the kitchen. He was trying to get some breakfast.
And was there any discussion with Kitty about what he would eat during the day when you guys were gone?
No.
And did you go shopping with her that day?
Yes, we did. We went to New Hope.
What was New Hope?
New Hope, it's a small town in the upper section of Princeton, which was a very charming place to go.
Was it a shopping area or just
It was a very special things, like boutique type of shopping.
Okay. Did it have a Dutch theme of some or Danish
Yes.
theme?
Yes, they do.
All right. And how long ago were you gone shopping with Kitty Menendez that day?
We were gone until 2:30 in the afternoon.
And did you go back to her home with her after you were done shopping?
Yes, I did.
And did you observe Eric at that time?
He was in his room.
Did you see him or did you just...
I did go in to see him, and he still had fever.
And do you know if he had eaten anything?
I didn't ask him.
During the course of the shopping trip, from 9:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon, do you recall any time when Kitty went to a telephone and called home to check on the child's health?
No, I asked her to do so a couple of times, and she told me it wasn't necessary, that he would be fine.
Now, were there other occasions that you were personally aware of when Eric was left alone when he was under the age of 10?
Yes.
And what other occasions do you recall?
One occasion I needed to go to a parents' weekend, and I had asked Kitty if I could leave Andy.
Okay, let me stop you there. This is an occasion when, just to make it shorter, when you went to the Menendez home on a day to drop Andy off.
That is correct, in 1980.
Okay, so this is another time when Eric was 9 years old.
That's correct.
And what time was it that you got to the Menendez home?
About 9 o'clock in the morning.
And when you, what day of the week was this? Do you remember?
This was a Saturday morning.
And you were going to leave town for a short period.
I was going to leave for the day and come back in the evening.
So when you, and how old was Andy at this time?
Andy was 2 years younger than Eric, so he was about 7.5.
And would you, of your own accord, have left a 7.5-year-old and a 9-year-old boy alone in a house?
No, I would not.
Now, on this occasion, when you get to the Menendez house, is Eric there?
Yeah, he was there waiting for us.
Is Kitty there?
No, she was not.
Is Jose there?
No, he was not.
Is Lyle there?
No, he was not.
Is there a housekeeper or a coach or
No one was there.
just Eric?
Yes.
So did you drop Andy off and go off and do what you had to do?
No, I asked Eric where was his mother, and he told me she would be back, that she had gone shopping.
And did you wait for her?
Yes, I did.
And what time did she get back?
At 1:30.
In the afternoon.
Yes.
And during that time that you were waiting for her, did you do anything with respect to feeding Eric?
Yes, I did. I gave Eric breakfast and sat with him and watch both of them play until Kitty came back.
Did Eric indicate to you that he hadn't eaten before you got there?
No, I could see he had not because he was trying to reach for some food.
Objection, move to strike decision including on part of the witness.
Sustained, the answer is stricken.
At some point shortly after you arrived, did you observe Eric trying to do something?
Yes,
What was he trying to do?
he was trying to reach some cereal.
Over the course of the time that you visited the Menendez homes, and I believe you've already testified, you visited the Muncie house, correct?
Yes, I did.
Let me just, if I may approach, Your Honor. The Muncie house, the one on the wooded lot, that's the one that you spent the weekend in 72.
That is correct.
Did you visit that house other times as well?
Yes, I did.
During the summers,
Yes,
during the Christmas holidays?
yes.
But you didn't stay there.
No, I did not.
When you would come back during the other summers and the other Christmases, when you come from Puerto Rico, would you stay with your sister or your mother?
I stayed with Terry, my sister.
Okay. So this was the only occasion when you spent an entire week inside your brother's home.
Yeah, that was the only time that they invited me to stay there.
And was there a fair amount of bickering going on concerning treatment of the children
Objection begs to when and where.
during that week in Muncie in 1972 during that Christmas time?
Could you repeat that question?
Yes, during that Christmas time when you were there for a week, were there a number of occasions when you were having disagreements with your brother and sister-in-law about their treatment of the children?
Definitely.
Do you think that's why you never got invited back?
Objection, cause for speculation.
Sustained.
Let's turn to the next house, which was the Princeton Junction house. Is it your understanding that the Menendez family only lived there for a year while their Pennington house was being built?
That is correct.
Did you ever visit them at the house in Princeton Junction?
No, I did not.
Did you ever even see that house?
No, I did not.
Now, would you say that you had the most contact with your brother's family when they lived in the Pennington, New Jersey house?
Yes, I did.
Now, Pennington is just a sort of suburban tract outside Princeton.
That is correct. Yes.
In fact, was the community in which they lived, the actual development called Elm Ridge Park.
Yes, it was.
And was this house also on a wooded dark lot?
Yes, it was even worse because it had a big lake in the back.
Worse in what sense? What's wrong with having a lake in the back?
Well, I did not like the idea of Andy and Eric being alone in the house with a lake on the back.
And were there woods around that lake?
Yes,
And were there fields beyond those woods?
yes.
And did the Menendez family have a canoe that gave them access onto that lake?
Yes, they did.
And was that one of the things you were worried about?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were aware, were you not, of the time when your brother and his family moved into the township of Princeton house?
Yes, I did. Yes, I know.
They lived there how many months total?
About 6-7 months.
Total.
Yes,
And then they moved to California.
that is correct.
And the next house that they lived in was this one in Calabasas.
Yes.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that most of the contact that your son Andy had, for example, with Eric was had at that Pennington Elmridge Park house?
Yes.
Did Andy and Eric appear to become close friends?
Yes, they were very close.
And did Andy spend nights sleeping over at Eric's house, that house
Yes.
in Pennington?
Yes.
And were there some occasions when Eric was permitted to stay overnight at your house?
Yes.
On how many occasions was that allowed?
I only recall 2 occasions.
On how many occasions, conversely, was Andy allowed to sleep at Eric's house?
Eric was allowed to stay at Eric's house anytime I needed
You
to
said
leave him.
Eric was allowed to
I'm sorry, Andy. Andy was allowed to stay at Eric's house or Jose's house every time I needed him because I needed to go away.
You had children who were much older than you,
That is correct.
and they were away at school.
They were in college, yes.
Did you have to go see them?
I wanted to go and see games or parents' weekends or things of that nature.
And so would you drop Andy off at your brother's house?
That is correct.
Now, you've been very critical of your brother's parenting skills.
Yeah.
Why would you leave your son there?
At the time, that's the only place Andy wanted to stay, and he was already 8 and 9, and I would remind him that for him to consider himself alone and that he had to be careful and protect himself because he was not going to get any supervision.
Okay, well, what about getting criticism? Did you also give him warnings about how to cope with that?
Yes, I told him what to do and how to behave and what not to do, even though his cousins will do it. I asked him to remember that I was away and that I was not there to take him to a doctor. And I wanted him to do me that favor in exchange of the favor of leaving him with Eric at the house.
Okay, now I'm confused about two things. Let me ask you, were you concerned about your son's physical safety?
Yes,
Had you observed over the years what you believe to be a lack of adequate physical supervision of Eric and Lyle?
yes,
And in fact, was there an occasion when your son was young and was with Kitty at her home and he sustained an injury?
that is correct.
An injury that required stitches to his face.
17 stitches.
Now, so you had concerns that your child might have some physical harm if he stays with them.
Yes,
So you would drill him, be a good boy, don't run like your cousins do, that sort of thing.
that's right.
What about emotional harm? Were you at all concerned that your Andy, if he were subjected to the belittlement and the other things that you have seen, that it would harm him?
That concern didn't bother me too much because I knew he knew that I did not believe that, and I did not agree with Jose's beliefs of putting the kids down. He heard me comment about that many, many times.
And in your own parenting of Andy, were you supportive
Definitely,
and encouraging and non-critical?
definitely.
So you didn't think it would do that much harm for an
No,
occasional-
because I made clear every time he would put down Eric, I would say how unfair his uncle had been with Eric, that Eric shouldn't feel that way.
I want to call your attention to at least one of those times when Eric stayed over at your house. Was there something Eric did with respect to the doors in your house that drew your attention?
Yes.
What did he do?
He locked the door in the bedroom when he was with Andy.
And didn't Andy lock his door?
No,
Irrelevant.
Sustained, the answer stricken.
Well, Your Honor, I'd like to be heard on this.
Objection sustained, the answer stricken.
During the entire time that Eric was there, did he keep the door locked?
yes,
Did you ask him not to?
I did.
Did he lock it anyway?
Yes.
Did you overhear Eric say anything about the fact that he could lock the door?
Yes.
What did you hear him say?
Objection hearsay.
I'd like to be heard on this, Your Honor.
Who is the speaker?
Eric,
All right, you may.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
There was animal feces all over the place. There was animal food all over the place, spread out in the kitchen. There were leftovers of foods all over the place. It's just towels were dropped on the bathroom, toothpastes without closing. Everything was just a mess.
what about the children's clothing? Did you observe how it was or was not maintained?
The boys were always with stains and rips on their clothes, and they were just very sloppy dressed.
Now, you were a financial planner at this time, were you not?
Yes,
Did you have some notion, without revealing it, as to your brother's income level during this time?
Yes, I did.
Irrelevant.
Overruled. You
yes,
answered
I did.
no.
Yes, I did.
Was it your understanding that your brother earned sufficient money to pay for a housekeeper?
Objection calls for speculation on the part of the witness.
Overruled.
Yes,
Was it your understanding that your brother earned sufficient money to buy clean new clothes for his children?
yes,
Did you ever observe the laundry room area in the Pennington house?
yes, I did.
And what would you see on a given day if you looked inside that laundry room area?
There were piles of dirty clothes and piles of clean clothes.
And both in piles.
Two opposite extremes of the laundry room, but they were all on piles, just dumped there.
And would you observe your nephews ever obtaining clothes from the laundry room.
Yes.
And what would you see them doing?
They would just go and fetch for socks or shorts or T-shirts on that pile of clean clothes.
Were you ever with your sister-in-law, Kitty Menendez, when she was preparing to send either of the boys to a sports camp for part of the summer?
Yes, I was.
And was there a typical behavior, something that she would do just before the boys went off to camp?
She would go to the store and buy everything new to send them to camp.
All new clothes.
Yes.
And what would she do with all the old ones?
She would give them to me for Andy.
And were you able to use them for Andy?
Some of them were not in good condition.
And were they stained? That's
Yes.
Was it the kind of thing that, you took care of your own home, your own laundry, did you?
Yes. Yes.
You a housewife expert on laundry like all other housewife experts?
Council, let's move on to something else.
Was it your experience that if you don't wash clothes, they wind up getting
Let's move on to
stains?
something else.
All right. Were there times when Kitty Menendez would be planning an event or a family gathering when she would call upon your daughters to come help her?
Yes.
Irrelevant.
Sustained. Answer stricken.
Was there an occasion when your daughters were over at Kitty Menendez's house assisting her in some cooking?
Objection, irrelevant.
It's a
Sustained.
foundation, Your Honor, for the next.
Objection sustained. The answer stricken.
Did you go over to Kitty Menendez's house on a day when your daughters were there cooking with her?
Yes.
And on that day when your daughters were there cooking with her, were your nephews there as well, Eric
Yes.
and Lyle?
Yes, they were.
And did Kitty Menendez make a remark concerning your daughters and her sons in front of her sons?
Yes.
And what did she say to you?
She said she would switch with me anytime, that if I wanted to take her boys, she'll keep my girls.
And what did you say?
I just found that outrageous. I didn't know what to say.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Was it said in a joking, bantering way?
Yes,
Then why were you so upset?
because it wasn't joking. She meant it.
Move to strike as a conclusion on part of the witness.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Were there other occasions when your sister-in-law said in front of one or both of her children that she was sorry that she had boys, or words to that effect?
Yes.
And moving ahead for a moment to 1986, when they were living in the Princeton house, the one on Mountain Avenue, did you go over there one morning and meet with Kitty?
Yes.
And on that particular occasion, did you see Lyle and one of his girlfriends?
Yes.
And was there a conversation on that occasion in front of Lyle when Kitty told you something about how she felt about her children?
Yes.
And what was it she said she felt about her children?
She told me she wished they would have never been born because they had broken her marriage.
And did she give you any other reasons why she wished they had never been born? In other words, if you said broken their marriage, did she say anything else about how they had broken her
She
marriage?
told me they had made her life miserable and separated her from Jose.
Did she say anything to you in that conversation about Jose's obsession with or focus on the children? Did she say
Yes.
anything about his calling, for example?
Yes.
What did she say in that regard in that conversation?
She said, my husband only cares for the boys.
And did she give an example of that? Did she say anything
Yes.
about when he calls, for example?
Yes.
What did she say about that?
She said that
Overruled.
she was tired of getting orders from Jose what to do here and what to do there for the boys, that he never asked her how she was or how she felt.
That his telephone calls were totally
For the
concerning them.
boys, yes, concerning the boys.
Did Lyle say anything when his mother said these words in front of him?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He was very unrespectful.
After he heard her say that?
Yes.
So it seemed to upset him?
Yes.
Did you observe, I'll strike that. I want to just move back for a moment to February 1987. You say at your father's funeral you observed this different behavior with Jose and Kitty, this holding hands, nice stuff. You saw them again after that, did you not?
Yes, I did.
On the other occasions after that, after your father's funeral in 87, did you see more of that behavior, the holding hands, the being nice?
Yes,
In fact, did that behavior pretty much continue?
that's correct.
Did you have any idea what had brought about this change?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you inquire of your sister-in-law or your brother what had brought about this change?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
No, I did not. They had never shared anything.
You have answered the question. You said
No,
no.
I did not.
Did you ever discuss this change with any other members of the family?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
During the year, I want to move on for a moment to Eric and some aspects of his personality, okay? When you saw Eric in Muncie in 1972, was that the first time you had seen him or had you seen him before that?
No, I had seen him before.
When he was a baby, even younger than that, could you describe what his personality was with respect to how did he act around people?
He was a sweetheart. He just open his arms and throw himself at you, and he was just a darling little boy.
So he seemed to like people. He'd go
Yes.
to people. He didn't seem afraid.
Yes.
Or,
No.
Now let's fast forward. Over the years, did you see that gradually diminish?
Yes.
By 1979 through, say, 1982, how would you describe Eric during that period of time?
He was very distrustful. He would not look straight to my eyes. He would not allow me to have a conversation with him. He was stuttered. Don't.
Stuttered?
Yeah.
Did he seem happy, sad, what?
He looked like a very sad young man. He was a little boy at the time yet.
Yes, in 79 to 82, he was.
Counsel, ask another question, please.
Did he seem outgoing or did he seem shy?
No, he was very shy.
Did he seem self-confident or did he seem nervous?
No, he seemed very insecure and very distrustful was the word. I mean, he just did not.
Was he, at that point, between 79 and 82, a talkative child?
Not with me,
Did you see him being talkative with anyone?
only with Andy. It's the only way that I saw him talking.
Now, as the boys got older, did it appear to you that their sports activities kept increasing?
Yes, definitely.
Were they around the family at family gatherings less and less as they got older?
Yes.
Were there even occasions when one or the other wouldn't be there for Christmas or wouldn't be there for Thanksgiving?
Yes.
And when they would come to family gatherings, were they staying as long when they were teenagers as they had when they were children?
No.
Were there certain critical family occasions, in fact, in which the boys were not there at all because of sports?
Yes.
Was one of those, in fact, your father's funeral?
That is correct.
And was it also your eldest daughter? Her name is also Marta.
That is correct.
And did you have a big wedding for her?
Yes.
And was Eric there at all?
No.
And was Lyle there for part of it?
Lyle was there, left to play tennis, and came back.
Now, when you say he left to play tennis, was he on some kind of practice or tournament schedule at that time?
No, Jose just said he needed to practice, so he was late for the wedding, late for the reception. He played tennis twice in between the wedding.
And your brother told you that was on his insistence? On your brother's insistence?
He told me he just needed to play tennis, that he was going to start the season and he needed to be playing tennis.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that by approximately 1984, until August of 1989, you actually saw very little of Eric.
Yes.
And after his parents were dead, did you see a great deal more of him?
Oh, yes.
And did you get very close to him during that time?
Yes, I did.
And do you think that was the time in his life when you best got to know him?
Yes.
Now let's turn our attention for a moment to Lyle. Do you remember Lyle as a very young child?
Yes, I do.
And can you describe, as you did for when Eric was basically a baby and a toddler, can you describe what Lyle was like as a baby and a toddler?
At age 2, 3, you're saying?
Anywhere
What-
from birth to 2, 3.
Between age 2 and age 4 is the one that I recall the most. I would go to family gatherings, very few times in the year, so I tried to get some rapport, and I tried to grab him and hold him, and he wouldn't let me. He would go running away and hide behind the sofa and just peek at me, and whenever I looked at him, he would run away somewhere else so I wouldn't find him.
So did he seem shy?
He was very shy.
And did he seem less willing to go to people than his brother seemed at the same age?
Definitely.
Now, from 1979 on, did you see a difference in Lyle's personality?
There were 2 times there. Lyle was one person in 79 and was another person in 1983.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
3.
Let's hear about the 1979 Lyle, that model year.
Lyle was very restless. He would not stay still 1 minute. He loved to tease. He would always look up to his father and look for his father's approval. He loved to play with stuffed toys and make conversations with coming with his Cookie Monster. He would go around, teasing everybody that Cookie Monster was going to eat them or do something to them. And he liked to socialize with his cousins.
Okay, well, now let's talk about Lyle 1983. What's the next phase?
He became very reserved. He would measure his words. He would make sure he thought answers before he answered. He was very unrespectful to his mother. He would answer back to his mother. He would not obey her.
And that was different than what you had seen before.
Definitely.
And that was the same thing you saw when she said right in front of him that she wished he had never been born.
That's right.
When, in the years, say, between 1982 and 1986, at these family gatherings, would you see Eric and Andy together?
Yes.
And did that become a very routine thing that Eric and Andy would go off together?
Yes.
Did you ever see Eric with any other friend besides Andy?
No.
Do you recall attending any of Eric's birthday parties?
I beg your pardon?
Did you ever attend any of Eric's birthday parties?
I don't think he ever had any.
Not any that you attended?
No, other than the family gatherings. I don't recall.
Well,
any
that's what I mean. Was his birthday celebrated at family gatherings?
That is correct. Eric's birthday was celebrated in Thanksgiving.
Okay, so there was no separation between his birthday and the Thanksgiving celebration?
No.
But there would be, he'd have like birthday cake or...
That's correct.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, did Eric ever have any parties to which friends were invited?
Not that I can recall.
Now, did you give birthday parties for Andy?
Yes, I did.
Were those just for the family or were they for other boys, for friends?
There were.
Irrelevant.
Sustain.
Did you ever invite Eric to Andy's birthday parties?
Yes, I did.
Was Eric ever permitted to attend?
No.
What about your other children? Did you have birthday parties for them?
At the time, they were older, so they were already on high school level.
Post-birthday
Different.
party
Yes,
age?
exactly.
Okay. Your Honor, this would be a good time to take a break before we go into an area that the people may want some 402 input on.
All right, we'll take a recess, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll resume at 20 minutes to 4. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. And we'll resume, as far as the juries are concerned, at 20 minutes to 4. Counsel are to be here at 25 minutes after the hour. Trial, the juries are not present. The defendants and all counsel are. Counsel have a matter you want to discuss?
Respond in advance to the people's concerns about statements.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Should just be outside the presentation, perhaps.
Is that your request, or is it just a
My
idle
request.
suggestion?
I might have to ask for specific language, though.
All right.
She can step out, but I'm not sure what specific.
All right, why don't you wait outside until you're called to come back in, please? Yes.
The mics are yours ago. Okay. In between the two of them. Here's the area, Your Honor. It has to do with after the homicides. Mrs. Cano took it upon herself to try to get a handle on the financial situation of the family at that point. Now, in one of her capacities as a financial advisor, she had been giving financial advice to her brother. And in 1987, she had sold him the Sun Life insurance policy that there has already been evidence about on behalf of the prosecution. And the relevancy of what I propose to elicit from her basically is this. In the initial hearing that we had about financial gain evidence, in view of the case authority, the court had ruled that the fact that there was a life insurance policy, that the defendants were the contingent beneficiaries, and that they ultimately received proceeds of that policy was admissible evidence on the general inferential theory that they would be aware of the family business, in the sense that they would be aware that there was life insurance on the parents.
Yes, the People versus Gedeke case, as I recall, was cited
Exactly.
by the defense, and the court felt that the reasoning was applicable to this case.
Exactly. But we have had information all along that, in point of fact, all inferences aside, our clients did not know about the existence of that life insurance policy. They had never seen it. As I say, Aunt Martha had sold it to their father, and Mrs. Cano is prepared to testify that she informed Lyle and Eric within a couple of days after their parents' death that they had this life insurance policy, and their reaction, both in their demeanor and what they said, was surprise. They looked surprised, and they indicated that they didn't know about the existence of that policy. That's part one. Part two. Mrs. Cano had obtained the employment contract for her brother, and under the terms of that employment contract with Live Entertainment, there was a provision that the company would pay the premiums on a $5 million insurance policy where Mr. Menendez's family, his wife, or whoever else he chose to designate, would be his beneficiary. This is separate and apart from a $15 million so-called key man policy that the company would also pay the premiums on, but of which the beneficiary was the company. Now, apparently what occurred, and we will be able to produce evidence to this effect, is that Mr. Menendez took the physical examination for the policy issuer of the key man policy. Subsequent to giving that physical examination, he had a mild heart attack. He did not, therefore, ever take the physical for the $5 million policy, which was from a different insurer. The defendants will testify that they were well aware, as were other members of the family, that their father had never taken the physical for the $5 million policy. In fact, it was something about which their mother nagged their father. When Mrs. Cano saw the employment contract, she had a discussion with Lyle and Eric in which she said she was looking for the $5 million policy. And her testimony would be that there was a discussion in which both Lyle and Eric participated, in which they assured her that there was no such policy because they knew that their father had kept putting off taking the physical. Now, when they testify, they will testify to some of the things their father said about why he wasn't taking that physical. But for these purposes, what's relevant is that they informed their aunt that policy doesn't exist. She then took the position that as a previous insurance agent, she would try to convince the company that the physical for the key man policy should have been applied to this policy, and somehow the company should make this money up. Well, that never happened. I mean, the company rightly pointed out to her that they were two different insurers. So that is part two of the financial information that we would seek to elicit. Part three.
Going back to the first
Yes.
area, as far as the policy that ultimately did pay off, she will say that the defendants expressed surprise that there was such a policy,
Yes.
but
And
that
she
they
was-
were not surprised or did know that there was no $5 million policy.
Yes, because
Okay.
that was part of his employment contract with Live. The other policy was written in 87 before, I think, this provision of the employment contract was written into the Live contract. It was his contract originally with IVE rather than LIVE. So that's the conversation she recalls about the $5 million policy. Then there was a third aspect to their conversation, which was she had gone around and contacted, looked at various documents and talked to various people and came up with a tentative asset list. Now, the actual contents of that asset list were not tremendously accurate, but this was supposedly the assets of her brother, and it included the Beverly Hills house, less its huge mortgages, the Calabasas house under construction, less its mortgage and construction loan, some deferred compensation that Mr. Menendez was owed by Live, some stock that he had in Live, and some stock options. But the point of it is that she indicated to Lyle and Eric that there were all these assets, and their response, and I think particularly Lyle is doing the talking on this, and I think Eric is present. Lyle's response was, I had absolutely no idea that my father had anything like that kind of money. Well, it turns out he didn't, but the bottom line is they showed surprise at these large numbers that she was quoting to them. Have I left anything out, guys? Is that it? Okay. I think that's the offer as to those three aspects. And it's my understanding. Oh, that they said that to her. Yeah. As part of this discussion about the assets, they indicated to her not only that they were surprised at the numbers, but that they didn't believe that any of it would come to them anyway, because they had been told by their father before they were killed, that they were out of the will.
Okay.
I believe she will testify that those conversations took place on Wednesday, August 23rd.
And who else was present?
From what I can understand, it's just her and the two defendants. And I think this is before the time. I'm not sure. I have to ask her if she hadn't seen the will that was actually admitted to probate at that time. And I'm not sure that she even knew that it had been located yet. I'm not clear on that. I have to ask her.
And was there some value put on the deferred compensation that had been held up and the stock options and stock?
Yes, I think she had numbers at that time for all of it.
Were they related to the defendants in some way, the numbers?
Were they related? I think she showed them this asset list.
Do you have that list?
I think I do, but I'm trying to figure out
Have
where.
you shown it to the prosecution?
Your Honor,
I think,
in the June 8th search, I believe there was an asset list seized, which is not in the handwriting of either of the defendants. I don't know if that's the asset list the counsel's referring to or not.
I don't know either because I don't have it memorized. That may have been an asset list prepared by Steve Goldberg.
I don't know whose it is. I just know there was one there.
I do have it, Your Honor, but it's going to take me a few minutes to locate it.
All right. And what is the defense offer as far as the legal grounds for the admissibility of this evidence.
Okay, taking it item by item, I think the first item is that the information concerning the insurance policy was admitted based on the inference that they would have known about it, and I think we're entitled to rebut that inference with their statement and looks of surprise just 2.5 days after their parents are killed, that they did not know about the existence of that policy. And it is Mrs. Cano who filed the claim for the money, and I think the court had made a comment in one of the hearings about how quickly that policy paid off. And I think the reason that policy paid off so quickly is because the broker who had sold it made the claim and pushed it. That's the Sunlight policy. I don't know where the asset list is right now. That's the admissibility of item 1 because the evidence only came in inferentially. There was no direct evidence that they did know about that policy in advance. And therefore, these statements that they make, which are spontaneous in response to a statement by their aunt, which shows their state of knowledge at the time that she's talking to them and is supported by body language that tells her they are surprised, we think is relevant and admissible to rebut that inference.
And what evidence code section does Mr. Burt cite for this?
You're right. He's the only one who knows the code. Mr. Burt, what section of the code do you cite for this?
Well, when the court refers to this, the statement of Mrs. Cano to the brothers,
The response of the defendants.
I think it's a non-hearsay statement being offered to show circumstantially the state of mind of the recipient of the information from Mrs. Cano.
So it's not offered to prove the truth of the statements attributed to the defendants that they didn't know?
No, I think it is offered to prove they didn't know.
The
But I think in an inferential, in a circumstantial sense.
Well, I assume there was a statement we didn't know, something along those lines.
Yeah, we didn't even know about that policy.
Right, isn't that why it's offered, to show the defendants did not know?
It's offered on 2 grounds, really, that it's circumstantial, non-hearsay. Their statement of surprise and that they didn't know would be admissible, I think, both as non-hearsay to show circumstantially what their state of mind is at that point. State of mind in terms of having no knowledge of the policy.
Well, that's a direct statement, I didn't know, which...
And to the extent it is a direct statement, then it is admissible as under the state of mind in section 1250. Statement of belief, that is then existing belief when that statement is made.
All right, is it the then existing belief or the belief at the time of the crimes?
Well, I think that in terms of 1250, it has to be then existing state of mind, then being at the time the statement is made.
And then circumstantial.
And then circumstantially, that reflect their state of mind at that point circumstantially reflects back on their state of mind at the time of the crime.
Because clearly, if they don't know it 3 days later, they didn't know it 3 days before.
All right. And what is the defense argument as far as the other 2 offers here, that there was a policy that was not enforceable for $5 million?
There was no policy at all, Your Honor, just to make the record very clear.
All right.
The policy was never written. There was simply a contractual agreement to pay the premiums on such a policy. And I think that, too, shows their then state of mind in the sense of state of knowledge, which reflects back to their previous state of knowledge, and that is, here is their aunt trying to convince them there is such a policy, and they're telling her, no, there isn't. And there is no evidence that the people can produce that will show that anybody told them after the homicides, but before they spoke to their aunt, that there was no such policy. Therefore, they had to have known it themselves. There, in fact, was no such policy. And the fact that they knew that 3 days later, when no one had told them that, and they're telling that to their aunt, shows their state of knowledge at the time and their state of knowledge 3 days before that.
And as to the third offer?
Okay, as to the third offer is really 2 parts. One part is the asset list and their reaction that they had no idea that their father had that much money. Frankly, I'm not terribly eager to put all that in because then we're going to litigate. I mean, what I would want to do is that she simply showed them an asset list and they made that remark. I don't particularly want to litigate every item on that asset list because I'm not sure that we can prove up the exact numbers or prove where she got the exact numbers because they are highly inaccurate with respect to what ultimately was produced in probate court. But just the fact that the boys, I think what they also indicated in that conversation was the fact that their parents had told them that they were so highly leveraged, so borrowed out because they had two houses, two very expensive houses going at the same time. And because their mother had so frequently indicated that she thought they didn't have much money, that they were very shocked by the kinds of large numbers that their aunt was relaying to them. They seemed surprised. They had looks of surprise on their face. Their tones of voice indicated disbelief. And the words they said was, or that Lyle said was, I had no idea my father had anything like that kind of money. The second half, and I think that also is state of mind at that time, that relates back to state of mind 3 days before that. And the last thing has to do, when particularly with respect to the evidence that's already in front of Eric's jury, has to do with his belief, Eric's belief, that he had been disinherited before his parents were killed, which was elicited by the prosecution through Dr. Oziel. And yet this is months before he sees Dr. Oziel. 2 months, 2.5 months, about 2 months before he sees Dr. Oziel. And here is Eric expressing to his aunt his belief that he was disinherited, that he was not an heir under the will. And I think that goes directly to whether or not this was a killing for financial gain. Both their lack of knowledge of the insurance policy, but even more so, their belief that they were disinherited prior to the shootings bears directly on their intent. And mind you, they're not accused of anything at this point. No one's accused them. They're not under arrest. No one in the family is even suspicious about them. No one has raised the specter of suspicion. So these statements have a much higher indicia of reliability, particularly when they're not precipitating even the conversations. They didn't sit down and write up a little diary, such as in the case that the people cited the other day, a little diary of their state of mind at the time of the crimes. It is their aunt who seeks them out to have this conversation. And these things that they are saying are in response to the statements that she is making to them. They don't even go off and consult and conspire and then come up with these statements. She will testify that they appear entirely spontaneous. So they have a high indicia of reliability at a time when they have no reason to make any of these statements to their family members because nobody in the family is suspicious. Nobody's pointing the finger at them. And based on both their body language and their demeanor and what they're saying, these appear to be reliable expressions of their then existing state of knowledge, which can relate back to their state of knowledge at the time of the shootings.
All right, anything else by the defense? Any other bases?
The statement concerning seeing the asset list, Your Honor, would also seem to qualify under 1240. Spontaneous statement, which is evidence of a statement is not made inadmissible by the hearsay rule if the statement purports to narrate, describe, or explain an act, condition, or event perceived by the declarant and was made spontaneously while the declarant was under the stress of excitement caused by such perception. Mm-hmm. So the event would be the showing of the asset list, and the statement contemporaneous with the showing of that list, I think, would qualify under 1240.
All right. And what is the people's response?
As to the statement of Lyle Menendez that he had no idea that his father had that kind of money, it would be our argument that that falls within the purview of Section 1250 and therefore is subject to 1252 of the Evidence Code. And although the argument is made that the defendants had not yet been accused of the crime,
they knew they did it. And so they had a motivation to try to deflect suspicion away from themselves, especially in light of the fact that they were in the process of getting away with the crime. And therefore, it'd be our argument that this statement is offered for the truth of the matter asserted, and that it is made in a situation to indicate his lack of trustworthiness and should not be admitted. That would be the same argument as to Eric Menendez indicating that he believed on a prior occasion that he was out of the will. That statement was made at a time when the motive to lie, and we do have evidence that the defendants lied on several occasions after the commission of the murder, that his motive to lie was still in existence and still operating to keep suspicion away from him. As to those two statements, then, it appears that 1252 would make them untrustworthy and therefore not admissible as an exception to the hearsay rule. If, in fact, they are not hearsay, then they still would be subject to challenge under the same theory of lack of trustworthiness under 352 of the Evidence Code. As to the $5 million policy, I don't believe there's been any evidence from the prosecution or the defense at this point as to the existence or the particulars of the $5 million policy. I don't believe that was ever even mentioned in, and I think there may have been some attempt to get testimony from Mr. Stevens on this point, which was rebuffed. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I know the jury doesn't have any information about it. So at this point, this particular subject matter is not relevant to any issues in this case. And so we would object to that as being irrelevant. The Sun Life policy, I think she could explain the circumstances under which the policy was obtained and then policy paid out. As far as the defendant's reactions, again, that would be subject to 1250 and 1252. Just a moment. I think, let me just see what else. Okay. And the asset list as it exists, I take it counsel does not want to admit the asset list into evidence. Is that correct?
No, I don't mind marking it so that we know what she was talking about, but I don't want to have to litigate the items on it, so I wouldn't want to admit it into evidence. And I think that's my thinking on an exchange.
All right. What I don't know that we have a copy of what counsel's talking about. What is the total amount of the assets?
I don't know. I can't remember. I think Mrs. Cano has it, but she's not in the room, so I can't ask her for it.
Well, if you want to present any form of evidence in the way in which you expect it to be offered, then you can have her testify briefly about it. Unless you're satisfied you've presented as accurately as possible the offer of proof.
I have no problem with putting her on because I'm not entirely clear about the interaction concerning particularly the asset list.
All right, let's get the juries in and we'll excuse them for the balance of the day and then we'll have this brief testimony.
Actually, if we could, Your Honor, there's a few things I could do with the juries on the prior topics because I wasn't finished.
No, let's do this.
Would you rather do this?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's get the juries in so I can excuse them, please.
Okay.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
All right, all the jurors have now gone and the witnesses being brought in. Just a point of clarification. There has been a request by the public, by the media, to have access to the defense brief in opposition to the people's amended motion in limine relating to the opening statements. And it was filed under seal, but my recollection was that there was discussion of those memoranda in open court and they were ordered not to be sealed. Do counsel have any recollection about that?
That's my recollection.
All right, if counsel have an extra copy of it and wish to make it available, you can do that. Otherwise, we'll have one made available then for the public, put in public file.
We don't have the copy present. We have no objection to the court being canceled.
Okay, all right. All right, let's then proceed with this hearing that relates to some of the offer of proof here. Could you get back on the witness stand, please?
hear that your brother and your sister-in-law were killed?
I was called to my office in West Palm Beach, Florida, around noontime, which was 9 o'clock in the morning, California time, on the 21st.
So that was Monday.
That is correct.
Did you then begin to make plans to leave to come to California?
Immediately.
And when
Yes.
did you come to California?
I arrived in California around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the 21st.
On Monday.
Yes.
And when you arrived on Monday, where did you go?
I was taken to the Bellage Hotel.
Bellage?
Bellage,
B-E-L-A-G-E.
yes.
And at the Bellage, did you see Lyle or Eric?
Not at that time. I saw them later.
Okay, when did you see them first, after you came to California?
I believe I saw them Tuesday morning
And where did you see them Tuesday morning?
at the Bellage Hotel.
At the Bellage.
Bellage.
Okay, and were there other relatives around at that time?
Yes, definitely.
And did you go to the house at any time on Elm Drive?
No, I did not.
Now, at some point after you got to California, did you make efforts to figure out what the financial situation of the family was?
Yes, I did.
And did you do that based on your experience as a financial planner?
That is correct.
And did you at some point then have a discussion with Eric and Lyle concerning what you believe to be the status of the assets of the family?
That is correct.
Do you remember when that discussion was?
Yes.
When was it?
That was either Wednesday night or Thursday night. I don't recall which of the two nights. But I'm definitely sure that it was before Friday, which was the memorial.
So it was before the memorial service.
Definitely.
And where did that discussion take place?
It was at their hotel, at the Bel Air Hotel, in their room.
And was anyone else present for this discussion besides yourself, Lyle, and Eric?
I don't recall anyone else.
And had you, over the course of Tuesday and Wednesday at least, gathered some information?
That is correct.
And was one of the pieces of information that you had the employment contract of Jose Menendez with Live Entertainment?
Yes.
Now, were you aware from the moment you heard that your brother had died that he had an insurance policy that you had obtained for him?
Yes.
And did you at some point start putting into effect a claim against that policy?
Immediately on Wednesday, I called Sun Life and I put a claim instantly.
And did you even talk to Eric and Lyle before you did that?
No,
Did
no, they had no idea.
So you were just doing that on your own to put in the claim?
That's correct. I knew that that was my job anyway. I was the agent that wrote it.
So you didn't even ask their permission or discuss it
No.
them, you just put in the claim?
That's correct.
And you hadn't discussed that with them on Tuesday when you saw them?
No,
And had you discussed with them before this meeting that was either Wednesday night or Thursday night, anything about the financial status of the
no,
family?
no. I was just gathering information together over at Live Entertainment at Jose's office.
So you went to his office
That is correct.
and you went through your brother's papers?
Yes, all his files.
And was that the basis of the information that you were gathering?
That is correct. Marcy helped me put it together.
Marcy Eisenberg, his secretary?
Yes.
Now, before you had your conversation with Lyle and Eric on Wednesday or Thursday night, had you yet seen the will or the wills for Jose and Kitty that have now been probated?
Well, I remember the wills because I was one of the witnesses on that will. I didn't have to look at it.
Well, you remember when the wills were written in
Right.
1981.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is in 1989, since the death of your brother, before the meeting with his children, had you seen the will again?
No, I had not.
Did you know if the will had been located yet?
I am not sure. I don't remember that conversation. I knew the information, so I didn't look for the will.
You knew the information in the will because you had witnessed the will.
Correct.
But you didn't know if anyone had physically located it as of the time that you were having your conversation with Lyle and
No. I know that Terry and Carlos were working on that, but I don't know.
Okay. You knew from having witnessed the will that Terry and Carlos were the executors under that will.
Definitely, yes.
And therefore they were taking on the responsibility of trying to find it.
That's correct.
Now, what did you bring with you, if anything, to this meeting that you had with Lyle and Eric on Wednesday night or Thursday night?
I brought several things.
Okay, would you just give us the list?
Yes, I brought two things. I brought Jose's financial statement, roughly done by me by hand. I also brought notes of things that I wanted to make them aware of because I wanted to prepare them for a meeting that we were going to have Friday morning with Peter Hoffman.
And Peter Hoffman was the president of Live Entertainment.
Peter Hoffman was the chairman of Carolco at the time, and he was the co-chairman of Live and became the chairman when Jose died.
All right, let me show you some documents and ask you if either or all were prepared for this meeting or taken to this meeting or referred to in this meeting. Let's start with the paper, this package that has a list of things and numbers mainly in blue ink. Do you recognize this piece of notebook paper with the mainly blue ink on it and the black ink on the back?
Yes, that was taken out of Jose's notebook paper, as a matter of fact, at Live Entertainment Inc., and I wrote that
Slow you
information.
down, slow you down. Whose handwriting?
Mine.
Was this,
Martha's an extra.
Okay, hey,
Why don't you
fellow,
do
wait, stop for a second. Get back. Get back to where you're supposed to be.
It's like a song.
All right, let's go.
Thank you.
Is it, can this be marked as an exhibit, please, one everyone?
That's
I'll do that.
181.
Thank you. Was this paper the paper that you prepared roughly from the documents in your brother's office
Yes,
to give you some rough idea of what the assets and liabilities might be?
that's correct.
Now, connected to that paper, when you gave these documents to me, was this thing called Personal Financial Statement as of 8/31/88, Jose E. Menendez.
Yes,
Did you find this amidst your brother's papers in his office?
that's correct.
Did you use this in any way to compile any of the data that appears on 181?
Yes, I did.
Maybe mark this 182, Your Honor.
Yes.
And did you take this personal financial statement with you along with 181 to show it to Lyle and Eric for the meeting?
Yes, I did.
Now, the third piece of paper in the package is a piece of gray lined note paper with black ink writing on it. Whose handwriting?
That's my handwriting.
When did you prepare this?
At the same time at Live Entertainment Inc., the same time that I was doing the other one.
And did this paper purport to show some very rough ballpark figure of potential tax liability against the potential assets of your brother's estate?
That is correct. I prepared that paper for my conversation with Peter Hoffman in reference to
The upcoming conversation.
correct.
Was this document taken to the meeting with Eric and Lyle?
Yes,
Was it shown to them?
yes.
So may I mark this one, Your Honor, 183?
Yes.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, if I recall, I gave them copy.
Okay, if you recall. Why don't you wait for a question, so
Okay.
it's too late in the day. Now, let me show you this other package, and perhaps you can tell me what this is all about. Here is another white line paper. This one does not have red margins on it to distinguish it from 181, and it also is black handwriting. Did you strike that? Sorry, Your Honor. Did you prepare this paper?
Yes, I did.
And what was the purpose in preparing this? This document's entitled Issues to Discuss.
That document was prepared to discuss with Eric and Lyle. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything important that I thought they should know about.
This was to make them aware of some of the potential financial and life issues they might be facing.
That is correct.
And was this taken to that same meeting that you had with them at the Bel Air Hotel?
Yes.
Then if I might, Your Honor, I'd like to mark this document 184.
Yes.
Now, there is another stapled set of typewritten documents on IVE letterhead, beginning with a letter dated October 3rd, 1986, and then followed with a personal financial statement of Jose E. Menendez, and this one does not appear to have a date on it.
It's attached to this one, so I think it's the same time.
Well, we don't know. This financial statement itself has no date on it.
That was as is, it was on his file.
if I understand you, you're saying that you found the financial statement already stapled to the IVE letter of October 3rd, 1986.
That is correct.
Did you take this package of documents to the meeting with Lyle and Eric?
Yes, I did.
Do you know if you ever showed it to them?
Yes, I did.
That now 185.
It is now 185, yes.
All right, it'll be marked 185.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, I also have in my hand now what appears to be page 5 pages of fax paper with printing on it.
That is correct.
And this was a fax apparently from attorney Stephen Goldberg to yourself on February 27th, 1990.
That is correct.
I take it you did not have this in hand in 1989.
No, that's the, okay.
Okay, so this was definitely not taken to the meeting.
No.
So let me segregate it out.
It's not marked. Right, it's not marked.
No, that's not marked because it's not from this time period. Okay, just in looking over the asset list so we understand it, the first item is deferred compensation.
Yes.
Where did the
Which
500?
exhibit are you referring to?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, 181. And that's in the amount of $500,000.
The deferred compensation was 2.5 million.
But there was $1 million in tax that you anticipated.
That is correct.
So the figures down the right-hand column are net figures?
That was my
Yes.
guesstimate at the time. Yes.
You have not stayed on top of the actual estate or what these items all ultimately valued out at.
No, I have not.
In fact, had you ever even seen the original estimate of value that was compiled at the time the wills were first submitted for probate?
No, I have not.
Let me ask you, how did this meeting take place? What caused you to meet with the two defendants?
I wanted them to be knowledgeable for the meeting that I was going to have with Peter Hoffman. I mentioned to them that I wanted them present at that meeting, that I was going to invite as well Carlos, which I knew it was the executive. And I wanted them to have some idea so it wouldn't go over their head of what I was going to be discussing and why and what were my findings.
And when did you tell the defendants that you wanted to meet with them?
I told them during the day sometime that when we were all gathering together, I told them I would really like you to give me some of your time tonight. I need to talk to you.
Did you
And
say why you wanted to talk to them?
I told them that it was in reference to a meeting that I was going to have. Yes, I did.
Did you tell them what the meeting was?
I told them that what the meeting was. No, I told them I needed to talk to them about that. I did not give any information of what I was talking. There were too many people around.
Did you say what you were going to talk to them about?
Not at that time. I just told them it was important for me to talk to them.
And did you talk to them any other time before the meeting occurred?
No,
And so it's your testimony that you did not tell them in advance of the meeting why you were going to meet with them? The
That is
specifics
correct.
of what you were going to talk about?
that is correct.
All right.
Was
Go ahead.
the reason for that based on the fact that when you were able to approach?
Let's not lead the witness. Let's not lead the witness.
I think you said something to the judge in response to his question that you didn't mention the reason for the meeting because there were other people around.
That is correct.
And before you actually had this meeting with them Wednesday or Thursday, did you have any private time with them?
No, I did not.
Were there always a lot of other people around?
Yes.
Were those other people all family or were there some non-family people around?
There were some non-family. Mark, for example, tennis coach.
Heffernan?
Yes.
How about Ozil, for example?
I did not see Ozil.
Okay. So you waited until you were in private with them to discuss what the purpose of the meeting was?
Right.
Does the court want me to go through the items on that asset list? Does the court think that?
That's up to you. You're the one who's offering evidence.
Okay, I'm not. Now, you have down on this list, for example, that the You have down something called life insurance group at Live.
Yes, I did.
What was that?
That's a group insurance that Life Entertainment had. I was informed about that from on Live, that they had a $50,000 group insurance to
Whatever
all the
happened.
employees. And I wasn't sure if Jose had it or not, but I wrote it down.
Do you know to this day if Jose had it or not?
I haven't heard anything, so I really don't know if that was substituted by the 5 million or supposed to be or whatever. I don't know.
You have no information that any such insurance policy ever paid out?
No, this information was gathered between Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday of that week.
Do you have any confidence whatsoever in the reliability of any of these numbers?
No, I do not.
Okay. I think that probably takes care of the numbers.
All right, so you don't know if the numbers on that list were correct or incorrect?
No, the numbers were gathered from Jose's files and information that Live gave me at the time of benefits that Jose had.
All right, but the question is, you don't know, as a matter of fact, whether the information on that list was correct on the date that you had the meeting with the two defendants?
That is
Accurate
correct.
information.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Well, I did want to get into the meeting itself. Do you recall about approximately what time of day the meeting was?
Yes, the meeting was at 1:00 in the afternoon while the reception was going on.
I thought you said the meeting was Wednesday night or Thursday night.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
mean the
thought
meeting
you were
with
talking
Peter.
Peter Hoffman. I'm sorry.
I mean, the meeting with Lyle and Eric.
Yes, it was before dinner. And I'm pretty sure it was Thursday night, but I'm not sure if it was Wednesday or Thursday, but I think that I tried Wednesday.
Look, just,
Thursday night, I think it was.
all right, so your best guess is Thursday rather than Wednesday.
Right.
Fine. Now, what was the first topic that you brought up with Lyle and Eric at the meeting?
I told them that I wanted to tell them what his father's assets were.
Okay, well, let me take you through a few of these because there's no reason for us to go through all those numbers that didn't turn out to be anything. Did you mention to them the life insurance policy that you had purchased, that you had obtained for your brother in 1987?
Yes, but that was later. That was not the first thing I mentioned to them.
Okay, what was, if you can remember, the first thing you mentioned to them?
That I wanted to talk to them about all the assets.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
That their father had.
Well, wasn't that life insurance policy, isn't that on that asset list?
Yes, but I gave them a bulk figure at that time. The reason why I'm stopping you there is because they reacted to tell me that none of this was theirs.
Okay, well, but let's start with what you said. You gave them a bulk figure.
Right.
All right, tell us what you
I
said.
told them that I thought that their father net worth was around $14 million.
Excuse me.
14
14, yes,
net worth.
yes.
According to that list you've got in front of you.
8 million after, exactly. I'm sorry. 8 million.
What did you tell them?
Did you tell them 8 million? Or did you tell
Well,
them
the gross was around 14, 15, and the net was 8 million.
Okay. So you told them both figures?
Yes.
And what was the reaction of either or both?
Lyle at the time said to me and Marta, we're not the beneficiaries of that money, and he didn't seem to be interested in what I had to say.
Did either of them say to you, we had no idea our father was worth
Excuse
that
me, that's leading.
Sustained.
Well-
What else was said besides we are not the beneficiaries of the estate?
Right. Then
What else was said?
Eric went about to add, and Marta, we are not the beneficiaries.
No, I'm confused now. You had
Go ahead.
testified that Lyle said none of that is ours. We're not the beneficiaries.
Right.
Okay. And what, if anything, else was said?
Right. I said something to the effect, I don't remember, like confirming that they were. And then Eric responded, shutting me down, that, and Marta, we were not the beneficiaries. Our father disinherited us over a year ago.
Did either of them at that time make any remarks concerning their knowledge or lack of knowledge that their parents were worth or not worth that much?
That is correct.
And who made a statement in that regard?
I think it was Eric.
Okay. And what do you think Eric said?
I can't believe my father had so much money.
Okay. And was that said at the same time as the statement about they were not the beneficiaries, they had been disinherited?
That was right afterwards when I was confirming them that I was sure that they were the beneficiaries.
Okay, now, there are two other topics I want to question you about. I'll tell you what they are, and then you can tell us which came up next in the conversation, so we don't have to go through all those assets. One is the Sun Life insurance policy. The other is the contractual provision for a $5 million policy. Which of those two, assuming they came up next?
I told them about the life insurance policy,
Which one?
the Sun Life insurance policy that I had written for their father.
Okay. And did you tell them that after you had assured them that they were the beneficiaries?
Counsel, let's not lead
Did you tell them that after this discussion that you've already told us
or
about?
before it.
Or before it, exactly.
Right. I told them right after. I told them that one, at least, I was sure that they were the beneficiaries.
Okay. And what was their reaction, either or both, when you told them that?
They couldn't believe it. They asked me, "Are you sure that my father didn't change it?" And I said, "No, he wouldn't. I would have known if he had changed it."
Did they evidence any other kind of surprise with respect to that information?
No, they were totally shocked. They had no idea what I was talking about.
Right. Mrs.
And this
Cano,
is
those
the
are,
$5 million policy?
no, this is the.
No, we are in the 400,000
Okay.
and the 250.
Mrs. Cano, it's helpful to us if you tell us what was said rather than tell us what you think they were thinking.
Okay.
What was there about what either of them said or how either of them looked that led you to say you thought they were shocked? What did you see? What did you hear?
Well, they started looking at each other and I said, "I can't believe this. Can you believe this?" And the other one said, "No, I mean, it can't be. I mean, there's some mistake here. You're missing something on Marta because we're not the benefit." They were totally convinced that we're not the beneficiaries. They were carrying on with one another in that sense. And I kept on arguing with them that I was sure they were.
Let me ask you something. Did either of them say anything during the course of that conversation that conveyed to you that they even knew the existence of that Sun Life policy?
No, they had no idea. They even asked me what insurance was I talking about. They, as a matter of fact, now that you say it, Eric said to me, "Oh no, my father never took the physical." And I explained to him, I'm not talking about the $5 million policy. I'm talking about a private policy that I wrote for him years ago.
And what, if anything, was his or Lyle's response to your saying it was a private policy that you wrote years ago?
They seemed to question that. They had no idea that this existed.
You're giving us a conclusion now. Did either of them say anything that led you to believe that they had no idea this existed?
Well, I believe it was Lyle that asked me, "Are you sure that that policy is not canceled?"
So one of them, Eric, mentioned a change in beneficiary and the other mentioned the policy canceled.
Yes.
Now, was there also a discussion then about the contractual provision for a $5 million policy?
Yes.
And would you tell us what that discussion was like?
Eric said that his father had not taken the physical, that he was not feeling good and he was waiting for him to feel better, and that he was sure they didn't have that policy.
Well, you've already testified that when you were talking about the Sun Life policy, Eric said something about his father not taking the physical.
Right.
Okay. How did it go from the Sun Life policy to the $5 million policy?
Within the conversation, I separated both. I told him that that this insurance had nothing to do with the insurance in his benefits that he had not done. That the $5 million policy, I was aware that was never done, and I was told at live that Jose never took the physical, but that I questioned that issue, and I started telling them why.
So you started telling them that you questioned whether or not the 5 million policy did or did not exist.
No, I was sure it did not exist. I questioned if we could negotiate with the company due to the fact that they did do a $50 million policy within the same time frame that Jose should have had his $5 million from his benefits.
Okay, and was it then that Eric said something about that they knew he hadn't taken the physical for that policy?
Yes, he had already said that before. When I was talking about the Sun Life, he was confused and he said he didn't take the physical on Marta.
Okay, but after you're saying this about how you want to try to negotiate with the company about it, did either of the
Yes.
boys say anything about that?
Yes,
What-
Eric repeated again that he knew his father had not taken the physical. Then I went about and tell him that he did take a physical for the 50 million.
I'm confused now. You're confusing me. Okay. You said that you told them that even though you knew there was no 5 million policy, that since your brother had taken the physical for the 15 million policy, you wanted to see if something could be negotiated.
That is
Correct?
correct. Yes.
Now, what was the boys' reaction to that?
They didn't respond to anything. They just looked at me like, questioning what I was saying. They didn't think that there was any way of connecting one thing with the other.
Did they say that to you? We don't think that makes any sense. We knew he didn't take we knew he took one physical and not the other physical or anything.
Well, they had no idea of the first physical that I was talking about. I don't know. For some reason, they had no idea of that $50 million policy that I was talking about.
Okay, so
They didn't know it existed. No.
So they didn't know that existed, but they did
No.
know that there was no physical for the $5 million.
Right. They knew that his father had that pending.
They knew he didn't have a $5 million.
That is correct.
Can you remember now, going back, apart from Eric's remark, when you were talking about the Sun Life policy, where Eric volunteered something about a physical, can you remember now what the first thing was that you said in reference to the $5 million policy? In other words, in straightening it out, ask you this, did it come up, did you first start talking about the contractual policy? Because Eric said something about no physical.
That is correct.
Okay, can you remember, in other words, you're trying to straighten Eric out. Would you tell us what it was you said to Eric to straighten him out?
I told Eric that the policy that I was talking about was a policy that I had done for his father before in 1981, and then I had converted it to a larger policy in 1986, and it had nothing to do with the company policy that he was talking about.
Well, how did you know Eric was talking about the company policy?
Because that's the only thing he seemed to know.
What did he say?
He said, my father never took the physical on Marta. He didn't have that policy.
Well, how did you know he meant the company policy?
Because he said it. He said that his father never had the $5 million policy because he didn't take the physical.
Okay, so he mentioned the $5 million policy.
Right.
But hadn't you already told him about another number?
No, I just told them that there was a life insurance. I had not given them any amount of dollars. I just told them that I had gone ahead and claimed that insurance for them.
Okay, and that's when Eric responded, no, he never took the physical for that $5 million.
That's right.
Had you handed them the asset sheet before you started the discussion?
I don't recall. I don't think so. I think I had them in my hand. I wanted to keep their attention. I didn't want them to start nosing around what I had written.
You want them distracted.
Right.
Cross-examination? How long do you think it'd be?
About 10 minutes. Should I start?
Yes.
You indicated that you were a witness to the wills from 1981 of Jose and Kitty Menendez, correct?
That's correct.
And I think you indicated that you came to Los Angeles on Monday, the 21st. Was it on the 21st that you went to your brother's business to start going through his files?
No, it was not. It was next day, Tuesday morning.
And how long did you spend? Was it the entire day or did you also do it on Wednesday?
The entire day of Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday.
Was it at the conclusion of those 3 days that you made your presentation to the defendants?
That's what I don't remember. It was the conclusion of my numbers. I believe that I went back after that, or that's what I don't remember, if it was Wednesday night or Thursday night. I recall going back and fighting for the $5 million and asking for the $50 million policy papers, which they did give me. I wanted to see the application of the $50 million that had been done for the key benefit of the company.
When did you leave California?
I'm sorry.
When did you leave California?
Friday night.
Okay.
With everybody else.
All right. And on Friday, did you go back to live?
Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning was the memorial. And right after that, there was a reception at live. And during the reception at 1 o'clock, I met with Peter Hoffman.
Okay. And prior, did you do any searching on Friday in your brother's files?
No, I did not.
Okay. So your memory is that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday you spent at your brother's office trying to straighten out his financial affairs.
That is correct.
And your best recollection of when you had the meetings with the defendants was on Thursday night, is that
I
correct?
believe so.
And that was at the Hotel Bel Air?
That's correct.
And did you eat while you were there?
We ate, but later. This was around 6 o'clock when we were all getting ready to go down to eat. I don't know where we ate, but we ate all together. I know that.
Did you eat at the hotel or did you eat somewhere else, if you recall?
We either ate at the Bel Air or the Village. I don't recall which of the two it was.
Now, why was it that you were involved in this? In other words, did someone ask you to do this with the estate or did you do it voluntarily? How did that come about?
Well, it's interesting. Tuesday morning, around 9 o'clock in the morning, there was this call. Carlos had left with Brian at the time, which is Kitty's brother.
Okay, now, is this Carlos Baralt?
Carlos Baralt and Brian Anderson had left, and my mother, my sister, and I were left in the room, and the phone rang, and Terry answered, and it was about a Fed call, and Terry had no idea what they were talking about. They were federal call, yes, a Fed call. And she said, Marta, they're calling from, I think it was Payne Weber, and there is a Fed call. Would you take this call? And I knew exactly what they were talking about, so
Okay. What is a Fed call?
A Fed call is a call when your stocks go down in value and you have a line of credit, a margin taken against that, though that value of the stocks go down in value, you have to replace whatever it's over the amount that you're allowed to have at margin.
Okay, and so there was a call from Payne Weber to this hotel where you were regarding the Jose Menendez's margin account?
That is correct.
Okay, then what happened?
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
That's when I realized that we were there gathering, doing nothing, at least I was, and that I should start doing something because maybe there were important issues of my brother that I should be attending.
All right, so you decided on your own to do this?
That is correct.
Okay.
I called Marcy and asked her to pick me up. And she did. She sent me a limo and she came in the limo to pick me up.
And that was on Tuesday, correct?
That is correct, Tuesday morning.
All right. Now, during the meeting that you had with the defendants at the Hotel Bel Air, I believe it was your testimony that prior to the meeting, you had not informed them of the nature of the meeting. Is that correct?
No, all I said to them is that it was important that I talk to them because I was having a meeting with Peter Hoffman the next Friday, and I needed them to go with me, and I wanted to inform them what I was going to bring about in that meeting.
Okay. And did it appear to you that they understood who Peter Hoffman was?
They were very confused at that time. They didn't understand anything.
Well, did they ask you who's Peter Hoffman?
No, they didn't.
All
They
right.
say, okay, that's all they did.
By the way, did they in fact attend the meeting that you had with Mr. Hoffman at 1 o'clock on the 25th?
Yes, they did.
Now, so then you went to the hotel for the purpose of discussing your brother's assets. Is that
That's correct.
And who was the first one to talk about the assets? In other words, did you just sit down and start speaking at them?
That's correct.
Did they ask you any questions?
No, they didn't at the time. I started talking, and by now you know that I talk. So
Okay, well, how did you start off the meeting?
I don't recall exactly my words, but I told them that I had been at their father's office for 3 days gathering information, and that it was important for them to know that they're now responsible and beneficiaries of this, and it was important for them to know what they had. And that's when they jumped at me and said, "And Marta, we're not the beneficiaries."
All right, and I believe it's your testimony that they both indicated to you that it was their belief that they were not beneficiaries.
They both tried to convince me that they were not the beneficiaries.
And you had personal knowledge as to the wills that you had witnessed in 1981, correct?
That is correct. I also had personal knowledge that there was no new will because I had discussed that with my brother in April in Florida.
Okay, now, when you discussed it with your brother,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this. I think we're getting too far afield for the purpose of this
I
hearing.
haven't heard a question yet.
what did your brother tell you about there being no new wills in April?
I'm going to object to that. It's being too far afield and hearsay at this point.
Overall.
I told my brother I had just finished doing an estate planning for a $50 million client, and that he had come up to my mind, and I had decided to prepare some kind of document for him to consider as far as doing trusts and wills and new trusts for the boys.
And at that time, did Mr. Menendez indicate to you that there had been no superseding will since the 1981?
That is correct.
Did you, in fact, convey this information to the defendants during your meeting with them on Thursday night?
Yes, I did.
And did you tell them what your brother had told you in April?
Yes, I did.
And I believe you indicated that when you got down to a figure that you told the defendants that the father's estate was worth a net of about $8 million.
I believe I told them that, yes.
Okay, well, you said you believed. Did you tell them that?
I think I did. I'm not sure if we got to the numbers because they were so honestly convinced that they had nothing, that they were not interested in the numbers, but I'm pretty sure I told them.
Okay, well, I believe that one or both of the defendants indicated I had no idea my father's estate was worth that much.
That is correct. It
Does
was
that-
Eric. Yes,
does
you're
that-
right. So I did tell them the figure. Yes,
And I believe you also indicated that the gross amount was 14 million. Is that correct?
yes.
Now, I think you indicated that there was some discussion between the two defendants where they spoke back and forth with each other after you conveyed some sort of information to them.
That is correct.
Okay, now what was the information you conveyed to them that preceded this discussion back and forth?
I don't recall right now, but it's the same one I said before. They were, it was either about the beneficiaries or,
Or the insurance?
no, it wasn't the insurance because Lyle didn't respond anything on the insurance. It was Eric, the one that said, I know my dad didn't take the physical for that insurance.
All right, so what was it that prompted the discussion back and forth between them?
I think it was when they were talking about the beneficiaries, that they were sure that there was no beneficiary or, that
Now, is that a
don't
beneficiary on a policy or a beneficiary to the will?
at all to the will. They were totally convinced that they had been disinherited.
All right, now they conveyed to you that they were convinced that they had been disinherited. Is
That's
that
correct.
And then they proceeded to have a discussion between them that lasted for some period of time. Because
No, it was just instant. I mean, they were asking me, I think that Leslie was asking me, how did I know that they didn't believe this? And I was telling her because they were going back and forth saying,
with each other.
right, but not about doubting that they were beneficiary. They were totally sure they were not beneficiaries.
All right, and they were discussing this in your presence, correct?
Yes, just for 2 seconds, but yes, it was not a long conversation.
Now, you indicated to them that you wanted to try to pursue the $5 million policy. Is that correct?
Not exactly pursue the $5 million policy because it didn't exist. I wanted to pursue the $5 million from some way from the company.
Okay, now, how much money did you tell them was contained in the Sun Life policy?
I believe I told them by this here, because I was talking memory, 750, but it was really ended up being 650.
Did you indicate to them that they would be dividing that money equally?
Oh, I told them that they were both equal beneficiaries on that policy.
How did they act when you told them that?
Very surprised.
Did they look happy or sad, or how did they look aside from?
They kept on not believing me. They really felt that that I was talking something that I wasn't really knowing what I was talking about. They looked very distrustful for what I was saying to them.
Hey, did you have any discussion with them during this Thursday night about how they were going to support themselves now that their parents were no longer around?
No, that didn't come about at all.
Do you have any discussion with them about any spending they had done prior to your dinner that night?
No, we were just, these kids were very upset at that time. I mean, Eric wouldn't stop crying. He was crying and I would say, Eric, stop it. And Marta's trying to talk to us. And he would keep on crying. And there was no such conversation. I mean, that's the least worried in my mind is how much they were going to spend or how was it going to be. I mean, we knew that things were going to be resolved one way or another. So that was not an issue.
Have a moment, please. Conversation last that you had with them, in terms of how long did the conversation last regarding the assets?
Well, we were together for about half an hour to 45 minutes. I don't know the assets itself, how long it take. I would honestly tell you, one I think was the least long.
I believe you indicated you went to dinner with them that night,
We all did as a family.
and that was you and who else?
All the Andersons, all the Browds, not all the Browds, I'm sorry, my sister Terry and Carlos Menendez and my mother and all the Andersons that were present, which were about 7 of them.
Did you have any further discussions at dinner about the subject matter you discussed with them at the hotel?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, they were not sitting beside me.
All right. I have nothing further of this witness at this time.
I have one question.
All right.
You said you told them, when they told you they were not the beneficiaries, they were disinherited, you told them that you didn't believe there was a new will because of this discussion you had with Jose in April.
That is correct.
Did they tell you why they thought they were disinherited, that there was a new will?
They didn't tell me why. They just were very convinced that they had been disinherited over a year ago.
Did they tell you that their father had told them that?
Yes,
Dad already told us he disinherited.
yes.
You didn't know about the burglaries at that time, did you?
No, I did not.
You did?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
done, I'm sorry.
Was it April of 1989 that Jose Menendez told you he had not changed his will?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
The information that you used to prepare your lists of assets, where'd you get that?
From Jose's private files in his office.
Where in his office?
They were right behind his desk. He had file cabinets on the back, not a cabinet, he had like a credenza, which had files, and he also had files on the right side of his desk at his office.
How did you get into the files?
Marcy, they were open. Marcy is the one who told me where Jose kept all his private information.
Did you have any information as to whether or not either of the defendants had access to that office at any time prior to Mr. Menendez's death?
Oh no, I don't know about it at all. I mean, Marcy, that Jose's office was pretty secluded. It was also a new office. They had just moved in, and half of the things were in boxes.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question. Did you know Lyle Menendez worked at Live Entertainment?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right.
What-
Anything else?
Yeah, where was the Sun Life insurance policy?
The Sun Life insurance policy, as far as I know, I don't know if they found
Did you
it.
see it?
No, of course not.
So that was not part of his papers?
Oh, no, I had that at my office.
All right. My question was, there's no reference even to the Sun Life insurance policy?
No,
in
not at
Jose's
all.
papers?
Not reference to any insurance policy. As a matter of fact, not even the benefit package of Jose was in his files. I had to request that.
So what was it that you found in the files? Did you find
Just
that?
this that you saw here, the
That-
financial statements that were old, and
Okay, so just those financial statements.
that's correct.
So the numbers that appear on your sheet don't come from the information that you found in Jose's files?
Not at all.
Did those come from talking to people at Live?
They also came from phone calls that I did to the banks and to find out loans and that type of thing.
So just to make sure I understand, the only financial information that you did find that helped you understand assets was this 1986 financial statement package, which is 185,
That's correct.
and the 1988 financial statement, which is 182.
That is correct. From that, I gathered the names of the banks and I called personally and I explained and found out more information about it. Plus Marcy also helped me.
Do you know what the purpose was for this financial statement of your brothers of August 31st, 88?
Yes, I do.
And what was it for?
Marcy told me that he had that done to buy the Beverly Hills house.
Yes.
And was it your understanding that the numbers on this were highly inflated to make them look good for the bank?
She told me,
She told you that as well?
yes,
And in fact, when you started checking to find out if any of these numbers were right, you found out they were all highly inflated.
that is correct.
All right, anything else? Okay, thanks. You may step down.